She slapped me in front of everyone, whispering that I was worth nothing. I expected to leave my brother's 18th birthday party with just bruises. But then my grandfather's lawyer walked into the emergency room. She handed me a secret folder he had compiled. If I open it, my family's life collapses. For the first time, the one on trial will not be me, but my stepmother. My name is Madeline Rhodes. I am 23 years old, and tonight, the only thing keeping me tethered to this earth is the rhythmic, deafening scream of a siren and the crushing realization that my family tried to break me. Red, blue, red, blue. The lights slash across my vision, cutting through the darkness of the ambulance interior like a strobe light in a nightmare. I try to blink, but my eyelids feel heavy, weighted down by exhaustion and swelling. Every time the vehicle hits a pothole on the highway leading away from the manicured perfection of Aurora, Colorado, a fresh wave of agony rolls over me. It is not just physical pain, though there is plenty of that. It feels as if a semi-truck has driven directly over my chest, flattening my ribs and crushing the very center of my dignity into the asphalt. My right cheek feels like it is on fire. The skin is tight, hot, and pulsing with a heartbeat of its own. I can taste copper in my mouth, a sharp, metallic tang that makes me want to gag, but the worst pain is on my scalp. It is a stinging, raw sensation where the roots of my hair were nearly torn from the follicles. I can still feel the phantom grip of her fingers, the perfectly manicured nails digging in, twisting, yanking my head back until my neck snapped audible protests. "Stay with me, Miss Rhodes. Can you hear me?" The voice is male, professional, but laced with an urgency that terrifies me. I force my eyes open. A paramedic is hovering over me, his face a blur of concern under the harsh fluorescent strips of the ambulance ceiling. He is checking my pupil response with a penlight. "I can hear you," I manage to whisper. My voice sounds wrecked, like gravel grinding against glass. He nods, adjusting the blood pressure cuff on my arm. "Good. Your vitals are stabilizing, but your heart rate is still through the roof. We need to get a clear picture for the police report and the doctors. Can you tell me who did this to you?" The question hangs in the sterile air, heavier than the oxygen mask they had tried to put on me earlier. Who did this? My mind violently recoils, flashing back to the scene just 2 hours ago. I see the sprawling backyard of my father's estate. I see the fairy lights strung elegantly between the oak trees, shimmering like captured stars. I hear the smooth jazz playlist that my stepmother, Victoria, had curated specifically to impress the neighbors. I smell the expensive catering, shrimp cocktails and truffle sliders, mixing with the chlorine of the heated pool. It was supposed to be a celebration. My brother Logan's 18th birthday, the coronation of the golden child. I see the guests, a sea of smiling faces, holding crystal flutes of champagne. And then I see her, Victoria, wearing a silk dress that cost more than my first car. Her face a mask of benevolent matriarchy until the moment I said no. I see her hand coming toward me, not a frantic, messy flail, but a precise, calculated strike. The impact had cracked through the polite chatter of the party like a gunshot. "Miss Rhodes?" the paramedic prompts gently. "Was it a boyfriend? A stranger?" I look at the ceiling of the ambulance. The metal is cold and impersonal. If I lie now, if I say I fell, if I say it was an accident, I can go back to the way things were. I can go back to being the ghost in the attic, the servant in the kitchen, the bank account with a pulse. I can go back to keeping the peace. But then I feel the phantom burn on my cheek again. I remember the way my father looked away. I remember Logan smirking as I fell. I take a shallow breath, ignoring the sharp protest of my ribs. "It was my stepmother," I whisper. The words feel foreign on my tongue. Forbidden, I pause, swallowing the blood in my mouth, and force the rest of the truth out. It was my stepmother and my family. The paramedic pauses. His hands freeze for a fraction of a second over the IV line he is checking. He exchanges a quick, loaded glance with his partner driving up front. They have seen bar fights, car wrecks, and muggings. They are used to the violence of the streets. but the violence of the suburbs, the violence that happens behind mahogany doors and wrought iron gates, always seems to carry a different kind of chill. "Okay," he says, his voice dropping an octave, becoming softer, more protective. "We are logging this as a possible domestic assault. The police will be notified as soon as we arrive at the emergency room. You are safe now. Madeline, they cannot get to you here." Domestic assault. The term floats around inside my head. It sounds like something that happens to other people, on the news, in gritty documentaries, not to Madeline Rhodes, the quiet girl who gets good grades, the obedient daughter who always stays late to help clean up. But hearing him say it, hearing a stranger put the correct label on the chaos of my life, feels like a dam breaking inside me. For years, I told myself I was just helping out. I told myself they were just strict. I told myself I was being sensitive. But you do not assault someone you love because they refuse to sign a check. You do not drag someone by their hair across the patio because they refuse to hand over the keys to a luxury sedan bought with their own inheritance. The memory assaults me again, vivid and nauseating. The party had been at its peak. Victoria had called for silence, clinking her spoon against her glass. She had summoned me to the center of the patio, right next to Logan, who was preening in his designer polo shirt. "Maddie has a special surprise for her little brother," Victoria had announced, her voice dripping with sugary falsehood. She had shoved the microphone into my face and held out her other hand, palm up, waiting for the keys to the brand new, matte black sports car sitting in the driveway with a giant red bow on it. The car that they had ordered using the trust fund my grandfather, Henry, had left for me. They thought I would fold. They banked on my embarrassment. They counted on the fact that Madeline Rhodes never made a scene. Madeline Rhodes was the doormat. Madeline Rhodes was the source of funds, not the source of friction. But when I looked at Logan, looking at me with that expectant, arrogant entitlement, the look of a boy who has never been told no in his entire life, something in me snapped, or perhaps something in me finally woke up. "No," I had said. The silence that followed was absolute. The jazz music seemed to stop. The wind seemed to die. "Excuse me?" Victoria's smile had faltered, twitching at the corners. "I did not buy that car," I said, my voice trembling but loud enough for the first 3 rows of guests to hear. "You used the access to my trust to put a down payment on it without my consent. I am not giving him the keys. I am reporting the transaction as fraud." That was when the mask fell. Victoria did not just slap me. She tried to erase me. The force of her hand was not just anger, it was hatred. Pure, unadulterated loathing for the one thing in her perfectly curated world that she could not completely control. I fell backward, knocking over a table of hors d'oeuvres. Shrimp and cocktail sauce splattered onto my dress. I tried to scramble up, but she was on me, grabbing my hair, yanking my face close to hers. Before the guests could intervene, before my father could rush over, not to help me, but to cover the lens of a neighbor's phone camera, she had leaned in. Her breath smelled of expensive Chardonnay and rot as she whispered the words that are now tattooed on my brain. "You are worthless," she hissed, her eyes black voids of rage. "You are nothing. You are worth nothing to us except the name on that account. Do not forget your place. You little ungrateful parasite." The ambulance hits another bump, jolting me back to the present. My hand is clenched into a tight fist at my side. My knuckles are white. I realize I'm holding something. I have been holding it since I ran out of the house, since I collapsed on the front lawn waiting for the lights to appear. It is a crumpled, sweat-stained envelope. It is a copy of a letter I received 3 days ago, a letter from Ms. Harrington, my grandfather Henry's attorney. It was a simple notification, stating that a specific folder held in escrow was to be released to me upon my 23rd birthday, or in the event of extreme duress. I had not opened the folder yet. I had been too afraid of what it might contain, too afraid of rocking the boat. I had brought the letter with me tonight to ask my father about it, to ask him why Grandpa Henry would have left me a separate, sealed file that nobody else knew about. Now, clutching this piece of paper, I understand. Grandpa Henry saw this coming. He saw them coming. I squeezed the envelope tighter, the paper crinkling under my fingers. It is the only weapon I have left. My body is broken. My humiliation is public. My family has just declared war on me in front of half the town. If I die tonight, if my heart gives out from the shock, if I have a brain bleed from the way my head hit the pavement, the truth dies with me. They will spin the story. They will say I was drunk. They will say I was mentally unstable. They will say I attacked them. They will bury me, cry at my funeral, and then they will drive that sports car to the reading of my will and liquidate everything I have. A cold, hard resolve settles in my stomach, freezing over the pain. I will not die. I will survive this ambulance ride. I will survive the emergency room. And then, I am going to open that folder. I am going to open it. And I am not going to protect them anymore. I am going to let the world see exactly what the Rhodes family is made of. The ambulance begins to slow down. The siren changes pitch, dying down to a low growl. We are arriving. The back doors fly open, admitting a rush of cool night air and the chaotic sounds of the hospital bay. Nurses and orderlies swarm the vehicle. Female, 23, blunt force trauma to the head and face, possible concussion, ribs tender. The paramedic recites rapidly as they unload the stretcher. Domestic dispute involved. I stare up at the sky for a brief second before they wheel me under the concrete overhang. There are no stars here, only the harsh glare of security lights. A nurse with kind eyes and efficient hands begins cutting away the sleeve of my ruined dress to start an IV line. She takes a plastic hospital bracelet, types something into a portable computer, and snaps it around my left wrist. I lift my arm heavily to look at it. Madeline Rhodes, DOB 10/14/2001. Just my name. For the first time in 13 years, my name is existing in a space where it is not attached to Daniel's daughter, or Victoria's stepdaughter, or Logan's sister. It is just me, bruised, battered, and lying on a stretcher with vomit on my shoes. But me. The wheels of the stretcher clatter loudly against the linoleum floor of the hospital corridor. The lights whiz by overhead. If you are reading this, if you are listening to me now, maybe you know what this feels like. If you are the eldest child, the one who was told that being responsible meant letting people walk all over you, perhaps you know this specific flavor of exhaustion. You know the weight of keeping secrets to protect the reputation of people who would not hesitate to throw you to the wolves to save themselves. You know the lie that says family is everything, even when family is the thing holding the knife. But I am going to tell you what happens when the good child finally breaks. I am going to tell you what happens when the scapegoat decides to become the hunter. I close my eyes as they wheel me into Trauma Bay 2. The darkness is not scary anymore. It is just a place to think. And for the first time in my life, I am not thinking about how to fix their mess. I am thinking about how to expose it. Grandpa Henry left me a folder. And tomorrow morning, Victoria is going to wish she had killed me tonight. The harsh fluorescent lights of the hospital hallway flicker and fade, replaced by the warm, golden glow of a dining room chandelier from 13 years ago. The smell of antiseptic and dried blood vanishes, overtaken by the scent of pot roast and expensive perfume. I am 10 years old again. We lived in a tidy 2-story house in a respectable subdivision just outside of Denver. It was the kind of neighborhood where lawns were measured in millimeters and garbage cans were hidden behind cedar lattices. My mother had died 2 years prior, leaving behind a silence in the house that my father, Daniel Rhodes, seemed desperate to fill. He did not fill it with memories of her. He filled it with Victoria. Victoria entered our lives like a meticulously planned renovation. She was beautiful, in a sharp, angular way that demanded attention. She had a laugh that sounded like wind chimes, light, airy, and completely manufactured for the benefit of whoever was listening. She knew exactly when to touch a man's arm to make him feel strong, and exactly how to tilt her head to feign empathy. And she brought Logan. Logan was 7 years old when they moved in, 3 years younger than me, but he took up 3 times the space. He was a loud, energetic boy with blonde curls and a smile that adults called winning. From the moment he walked through the front door, carrying a limited edition baseball bat, the energy in the house shifted. The center of gravity moved away from the shared grief my father and I had been navigating and settled firmly around Logan. "Here is the little king," my father had boomed on move-in day, hoisting Logan onto his shoulders. I remember standing by the stairs, holding my breath, waiting for my turn, waiting for him to say, "And here is my princess," or even just, "Come here, Maddie." But he didn't. He was too busy showing Logan the backyard. That first dinner as a blended family set the template for the next decade of my life. We sat around the mahogany table, the good china laid out because Victoria insisted we start off on the right foot. "So, Logan," my father said, cutting into his roast beef with a vigor I hadn't seen in years, "Victoria tells me you are quite the striker on the soccer field. Maybe we can get you into the elite league this fall. What do you think? Sport?" Logan's mouth was full, but he nodded vigorously. "I am the best on the team. Coach says I have natural talent." "That is what I like to hear," my father beamed, looking at Victoria. "He has got drive. That is important. A man needs drive." They spent 20 minutes discussing Logan's potential, his speed, his grades, his uncanny ability to make friends. Victoria sat there, preening, accepting the compliments for her son as if she had personally sculpted his DNA. Then, there was a lull in the conversation. The silence stretched. I sat up straighter, gripping my fork. I had gotten an A on my history project that day. I had drawn a map of the Oregon Trail. I wanted to tell him. My father turned his head toward me. His eyes were glazed, the excitement fading into a dull domestic checklist. "Maddie," he said. "Yes, Daddy?" "Did you remember to load the dishwasher before we sat down? I do not want dirty plates sitting in the sink when guests come over this weekend." I felt my chest tighten, the air squeezing out of my lungs. "Yes," I whispered. "I did it." "Good," he said, and immediately turned back to Logan. "Now, about that batting cage in the backyard." I learned quickly that in this new ecosystem, I was not a child to be nurtured. I was a variable to be managed. Victoria began her work on me within a week. She called it polishing, but it felt more like sanding down a piece of rough wood until there was nothing left of the original grain. "Madeline, stand up straight," she would say as I walked through the living room. "You slouch. It makes you look defeated. Nobody likes a defeated girl." She went through my closet when I was at school, bagging up the comfortable t-shirts and jeans my mother had bought me. When I came home, my bed was covered in pastel dresses and stiff blouses with lace collars. "We have an image to maintain." "Sweetie," she told me, holding up a pink dress that looked like something a porcelain doll would wear, "your father is doing well in his business. We must look perfect for the neighbors. You want to make your father proud, do you not?" That was her favorite weapon, my father's approval. She held it hostage, dangling it just out of reach. I tried so hard to earn it back. I thought if I could just be the daughter she wanted, maybe she would love me. Maybe she would tell my father to look at me the way he looked at Logan. For Mother's Day that first year, I spent 3 days making a card. I used my best markers, drawing intricate flowers and writing a poem I had composed myself. I even baked cookies, following a recipe I found online, burning my finger on the tray but not caring because I wanted them to be perfect. I presented them to her at breakfast. "Happy Mother's Day, Victoria," I said, too shy to call her mom yet. She looked at the card, her eyes scanning the poem quickly. She took a bite of a cookie. "Oh, aren't you sweet?" she said, patting my cheek with a hand that felt cold. "Thank you, Madeline, very thoughtful." I floated on that thank you for the rest of the morning. I felt seen. Later that afternoon, I went to the kitchen to get a glass of water. The garbage can lid was slightly askew. Right there on top, resting on a pile of coffee grounds and potato peelings, was my card. It wasn't even folded. It was torn in half. The cookies were in there too. I stood there for a long time, staring at the trash. I didn't cry. I think that was the moment I realized that no matter how good the cookies were, no matter how pretty the drawing was, it wouldn't matter. The problem wasn't the gift. The problem was the giver. As the years went by, the divide between Logan and me grew into a canyon. Logan's life was a whirlwind of expensive opportunities. He had piano lessons on Tuesdays, private basketball coaching on Thursdays, and elite summer camps that cost thousands of dollars. My father wrote the checks without blinking, calling them investments in the future. My life, on the other hand, was governed by the list. It was a yellow legal pad that Victoria kept magnet clipped to the refrigerator. Every morning, there were new tasks. Vacuum the stairs, dust the baseboards, weed the garden, fold the laundry, including Logan's, polish the silver. I became the invisible machinery that kept the Rhodes household running. One afternoon, Mrs. Gable, our next-door neighbor, came over for tea. I was in the living room, wiping down the coffee table while they sat on the patio. The sliding glass door was open. "Your house is always so immaculate, Victoria," Mrs. Gable said. "I do not know how you manage it with 2 kids and a husband." "Oh, well," Victoria laughed. That wind chime sound again. "I have help. Maddie is very useful." "She is such a good girl," Mrs. Gable continued. "I saw her hauling the recycling bins out yesterday. Whatever you are doing, it is working. She really helps carry the load for the family." I paused, rag in hand, waiting for Victoria to agree, to say, "Yes, she is a wonderful daughter." Instead, Victoria sipped her tea and smiled. "Yes, Maddie knows her role. She's very distinct from Logan. Of course, Logan is the star, but you need someone to build the stage, right? Maddie is very good at maintenance." She spoke about me the way one speaks about a reliable dishwasher or a sturdy vacuum cleaner. I was an appliance. I was an asset that depreciated if I wasn't working. When I was 12, I discovered writing. It was an escape, in stories. I could create worlds where justice existed, where the quiet girl in the corner was actually a queen in disguise. I filled 3 spiral notebooks in a month. I saw a flyer at the community center for a creative writing workshop. It was $50 for 8 weeks. I ran home, clutching the flyer, feeling a spark of hope I hadn't felt in years. I waited until dinner. "Dad," I said, interrupting Logan's monologue about his new sneakers, "I found this class. It is for writing. I really want to go. It is on Tuesday nights." I slid the flyer across the table. My father picked it up, squinting at the price. $50? For someone to teach you how to make things up? "It is creative writing," I explained, my voice shaking. "The teacher is a published author. I think I'm good at it, Dad. I really do." Victoria chimed in, her voice smooth as silk. "Oh, honey, writing is a nice little hobby, isn't it? But Tuesday nights? That is when Logan has piano. We need you here to help with dinner so I can drive him." "I can prep dinner before I go," I pleaded. "Please, Dad." My father tossed the flyer back at me. It fluttered onto my plate, landing in the gravy. "Not this time, Maddie," he said, turning back to his meal. "Money is tight right now. We just paid for Logan's travel team fees. We have to prioritize. Logan has a real shot at a scholarship if he keeps this up. We need to put our resources into things that are worthy, things that have a return on investment. Things that are worthy." The message was clear. Logan was an investment. I was an expense. I took the gravy-stained flyer and threw it away. That night, I stopped showing them anything. I learned the art of silence. I learned that if I wanted to keep something safe, I had to hide it. I bought my own notebooks with lunch money I saved by not eating. I wrote late at night, using the flashlight on my phone under the covers. I wrote stories about families that ate their young. I wrote stories about ghosts who screamed but no one heard. I hid the notebooks under my mattress, terrified that Victoria would find them and read them aloud at the dinner table to mock me. She was a master of the narrative, Whenever relatives came over for Thanksgiving or Christmas, Victoria would spin the family history until I barely recognized it. "It has been so hard for Logan," she would say, clutching a glass of wine, her eyes misty. "Coming into a new family, having to adjust. He is such a survivor. He has overcome so much adversity." She never mentioned that the adversity was living in a 4,000 square foot house with parents who worshiped the ground he walked on. Meanwhile, I was in the kitchen, washing the turkey pan, listening to them talk about how brave Logan was. "And Maddie?" an aunt would ask. "Where is she?" "Oh, you know Maddie," Victoria would sigh, lowering her voice. "She is difficult. She prefers to be alone. We try to include her, but she just shuts us out. It breaks Daniel's heart, really, but we love her anyway." I wanted to scream. I wanted to run into the living room and shout, "I am here. I am scrubbing your dishes. I am not shutting you out. You pushed me out." But I didn't. I scrubbed the pan harder. The physical abuse didn't start with a slap. It started with boundaries being crossed. Small invasions of space that I was told were my fault. It began when I was 13. I was finally taller than her, and perhaps that threatened her. I had been cleaning the living room, and I had moved Logan's video game console to dust under it. I forgot to plug it back in. When Logan came home and couldn't play immediately, he threw a tantrum. "Maddie broke it. She is so stupid." Victoria came storming in. "Why can you not leave his things alone?" "I was dusting," I said, trying to defend myself. "You told me to dust." "Do not talk back to me," she snapped. She reached out and grabbed my upper arm. It wasn't a hold. It was a squeeze. Her fingers were like steel claws, digging into the soft flesh of my bicep. She squeezed until I gasped, until tears sprung to my eyes. "You are clumsy," she hissed, her face inches from mine. "And you are careless. Fix it, now." She shoved me toward the TV stand. It wasn't a hard shove, but it was enough to make me stumble. I looked at my father. He was sitting in his armchair, reading the newspaper. He heard it. He had to hear it. "Dad?" I said, my voice trembling. He lowered the paper just an inch. He didn't look at me. He looked at Victoria. "Don't upset your mother, Maddie," he said wearily. "Just plug the damn thing in." That was the day the last piece of my childhood died. I realized that my father wasn't just oblivious. He was complicit. He had traded his daughter for a quiet life and a happy wife. From then on, the touches got harder. A pinch on the waist when I walked too slow. A sharp yank of my hair while she was fixing my braid before church. A shoulder check into the doorframe when I suggested Logan should carry his own laundry upstairs. "Oops," she would say, her eyes cold and dead. "You take up too much space. Maddie, move." And I did. I moved. I shrank. I folded myself into smaller and smaller shapes, trying to become two-dimensional, trying to become nothing, just so I wouldn't get hit. But I was always watching, and I was always remembering. I didn't know it then, but in a dusty house a few towns over, an old man was watching too, and he was keeping score. When I turned 15, I found a sanctuary. It was not a church or a park, but a small, independent bookstore tucked into the back corner of a strip mall called the Dusty Spine. The air inside smelled of vanilla, binding glue, and decomposing paper. To most people, it smelled musty. To me, it smelled like freedom. I got a job there shelving books and working the register on weekends and Thursday nights. The owner, a grumpy man with thick glasses named Mr. Henderson, paid me minimum wage, but he paid me in cash sometimes, and he let me read whatever I wanted when the store was empty. For the first time in my life, I had a place where silence was not a weapon. It was just peace. That job became my lifeline. Every dollar I earned was a brick in the wall I was building between me and the Rhodes family. I opened a student savings account at a bank down the street, hiding the passbook inside a hollowed-out copy of Great Expectations. I had a plan, a desperate, clawing ambition. I was going to save every cent. I was going to apply to journalism school or a creative writing program out of state. I was going to pack a bag one night, leave a note, and never look back. I was naive. I thought that because the money was mine, earned with my own hands, it was safe. I forgot that in my house, nothing belonged to me, not my time, not my space, and certainly not my future. It started slowly, insidious and calculated, disguised as family unity. My father and Victoria found out about the account when a statement arrived in the mail that I failed to intercept. I remember standing in the kitchen, my stomach dropping as Victoria held the envelope up to the light. "Well, look at this," she said, her voice purring. "Our little Maddie is becoming a capitalist. You have saved quite a bit here, sweetheart. Over $800. "It is for college," I said quickly, reaching for the letter. She pulled it back, smiling. "Of course it is. It is good to see you taking responsibility. It shows maturity." I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. It was just the inventory check. They were assessing the assets. 2 weeks later, the washing machine broke. It was a high-end model. Naturally, because Victoria refused to have appliances that did not look like they belonged on a spaceship. I came home from school to find Victoria sitting at the kitchen table, her head in her hands, looking the picture of tragic stress. "What is wrong?" I asked, conditioned to manage her moods. "The washer," she sighed. "The repairman says the motor is shot. It is going to cost $400 to fix it, or we have to buy a new one. Your father is tied up with assets at the business right now. Cash flow is tight until the end of the quarter." She looked up at me, her eyes wide and pleading. It was a performance worthy of an Oscar. "Maddie," she said softly, "I know you have that money saved. Could you loan it to us? Just for a week? As soon as your father gets his bonus, we will pay you back with interest. I promise. I just cannot have piles of dirty laundry sitting around with Logan's big game coming up." I hesitated. "It is my college fund. Victoria?" I know, she said, reaching out to squeeze my hand. "And I am so proud of you. But this is a family emergency. Families help each other, right? We put a roof over your head. We feed you. It is just a short-term loan." The guilt trip was heavy, suffocating. If I said no, I was the selfish daughter. I was the parasite. "Okay," I whispered. "Just for a week." I withdrew the money. The washing machine was fixed. A week passed, then 2, then a month. When I finally built up the courage to ask for the money back, Victoria laughed. It wasn't a mean laugh, but a dismissive one, as if I had told a cute joke. "Oh, Maddie, do not be so petty," she said, waving her hand while chopping vegetables. "We spent that money on groceries last week. You eat here, do you not? Consider it your contribution to the household expenses. You are 15 now. It is time you learned what things cost." The money never came back. The loan had become a tax. The theft escalated from there. It stopped being about household emergencies and started being about Logan. The spring of my 16th year, Logan was invited to an elite basketball prospect camp in California. It was the kind of camp that promised scouts from major universities. The fee was exorbitant, $2,000 for registration, plus flights and hotels. My father sat me down in the living room. He looked serious, like a general briefing a soldier. "Maddie," he said, "we need to talk about your savings." By this point, I had worked double shifts and managed to build the account back up to nearly $1,500. I was exhausted. My grades were slipping slightly because I was working so much, but I had the money. "What about it?" I asked, guarding the space around me. "Logan has a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity," my father said. "This camp could secure his scholarship. It is an investment in the family's future. If he gets a full ride, that saves us hundreds of thousands later." "That is great for Logan," I said. "But what does it have to do with me?" "We are a little short on the liquidity for the trip," Victoria interjected, entering the room with a tray of cookies for Logan. "We need to access your fund to cover the airfare and the hotel." "No," I said. The word hung in the air. "That is my money. I earned it shelving books. It is for my school." Victoria's face hardened. The mask slipped. "Don't be selfish. Madeline, your brother has actual talent. He is going to be a star. This money is sitting there doing nothing. You can earn it back. You have plenty of time. Logan's window is now. I am not giving it to you, I said, my voice shaking. It was not a request, my father said, his voice dropping to that low, dangerous register. I am your father. I am the legal guardian on that account until you are 18. I can access it whenever I want. I was trying to be polite by asking. I stared at him, feeling the blood drain from my face. You would steal from me? To pay for him to play basketball? It is not stealing, he spat. It is resource allocation. You are part of this family. You sacrifice for the family. That is what we do. They drained the account the next day. Logan went to California. He came back with a tan and a new pair of sneakers. He didn't even say thank you. The final blow, the one that truly killed the girl I used to be and birthed the person I am now, came 6 months later. I had applied for a summer writing intensive at a prestigious liberal arts college on the East Coast. It was competitive. Thousands applied. I sent in a portfolio of my short stories, the ones I wrote under the covers at night. I got in. Not only did I get in, I got a merit scholarship that covered 80% of the tuition. I held the acceptance letter in my hands, crying silent tears of joy in the bathroom. It was validation. It was proof that I was not worthless. Someone saw me. I needed $300, just $300 to cover the remaining deposit and the bus ticket. I didn't have it. They had taken everything for Logan's tournament fees. I went to them. I laid the letter on the dining table. I was trembling. Look, I said, my voice thick with hope. I got a scholarship, a merit scholarship. For my writing, I just need $300. Please, I will work extra shifts when I get back. I will pay you back double. Victoria picked up the letter. She read it with a look of mild amusement, like she was reading a coupon for a product she didn't buy. Writing? She said, tossing the letter back onto the table. Maddie, be realistic. It is a huge honor, I argued. They only take 50 students from around the country. And what does it lead to? My father asked, not even looking up from his phone. A career in starvation? You want to be a poet? There is no money in that. It is not about money, I pleaded. It is about me. It is about something I am good at. Logan needs braces, Victoria said coldly, and he needs private coaching if he is going to make varsity next year. We cannot throw $300 away on a summer camp for hobbies. We have to prioritize. You spent $2,000 on his camp, I screamed. It was the first time I had raised my voice in years. You stole my money for his camp. I just need $300. My father slammed his hand on the table. The silverware rattled. Enough, he roared. Do not speak to your mother that way. Logan is different. Logan brings prestige to this name. Logan has a future. You are chasing fantasies. We are not funding your little daydream while there are real bills to pay. You mean Logan's bills, I said, tears streaming down my face. Same thing, Victoria said, sipping her iced tea. Family is family. Logan is the priority. When you are older, you will understand that we are doing this for your own good. You need to learn to be practical. I didn't go to the camp. I had to email the admissions director and decline the spot. I told them I had a family emergency. I lay in bed for 3 days, staring at the ceiling, feeling a darkness settle in my chest that has never fully left. I realized then that family first was a lie. It was a slogan they used to strip mine me. The translation was simple. Logan first, Victoria first, Daniel first, Maddie last, Maddie never. I stopped fighting loudly after that. I changed tactics, but the small rebellions still happened, and they were crushed just as ruthlessly. I tried to propose a chore chart. I created a spreadsheet, because I was that kind of nerd, showing the disparity in labor. I logged the hours I spent cleaning versus the hours Logan spent. It was 40 hours a week for me, 0 for him. Why doesn't Logan have to do his own laundry? I asked one night during a commercial break. He is 16. He is capable. My father sighed, rubbing his temples. Maddie, do not start. You know your mother gets stressed when the house is messy. Logan has practice. He is tired. I have a job and school, I countered. I am tired too. You are naturally better at domestic things, Victoria said, smiling that oily smile. She walked over and draped her arm around my shoulders. I went rigid. You are the older sister. You are the woman of the house, practically. You are stronger than him in that way. You can handle the burden. We rely on you to keep the peace. She leaned in close, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Don't you want to be the good one? The one who holds us together? It was psychological grooming. She was framing my servitude as a virtue. She was telling me that my value lay in how much pain I could absorb so that her precious son didn't have to feel any discomfort. Logan, of course, absorbed this lesson perfectly. He began to treat me not as a sister, but as staff. He would leave his muddy cleats in the middle of the hallway. He would leave plates of half-eaten food on the couch. One afternoon, I asked him to move his gym bag so I could vacuum. He looked at me from the couch, not moving a muscle. Move it yourself, he said. I am not your maid, Vaughn, I snapped. He laughed. It was a cruel, barking sound. Aren't you? You cook? You clean? You don't pay rent? You have no money? Sounds like a maid to me. Honestly, Maddie, without you, we would probably have to hire a real cleaner. You should be grateful we let you live here for free. I looked at Victoria. She was standing right there, watering her orchids. She heard him. She heard her golden boy call his sister a maid. She didn't scold him. She didn't tell him to apologize. She chuckled. Oh, Logan, stop teasing your sister, she said lightly, but her eyes were dancing with amusement. She agreed with him. That night, I went to the library instead of going home. I sat at a computer terminal and started typing words into the search bar. I typed in what I felt. Parents taking child's money. Brother treated better than sister. Stepmother lies and manipulates. The search results spit back terms I had never heard before but instantly recognized. Financial abuse, narcissistic family structure, the scapegoat child, golden child syndrome, gaslighting. I read for hours. I read articles that described my life with terrifying accuracy. I learned that I wasn't sensitive. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't selfish. I was a victim of systematic abuse. It was a moment of profound validation, but it was followed by a crushing wave of despair. Because knowing the name of the poison doesn't mean you have the antidote. I sat there, looking at the blinking cursor, and thought about leaving. I was 17. I could run away. I could sleep in the bookstore. But then the reality hit me. I had $0. They had taken my savings. I had no car. They wouldn't let me get a license because insurance is too expensive. I had no documents. Victoria kept my birth certificate and social security card locked in her safe for safekeeping. They had not just broken my spirit. They had systematically removed every tool I needed to escape. They had built a cage out of poverty and dependence, and then told me I should be thankful for the shelter. I walked home that night in the rain. I walked through the front door, and Victoria looked up from her magazine. You are late, she said. Dinner needs to be started. Okay, I said. My voice was dead flat. I went to the kitchen and took out the knife to chop onions. I looked at the blade. I wasn't thinking about hurting them. I was thinking about cutting the cords. I didn't know how yet, but I knew that I had to survive long enough to find a way out. I just didn't know that the exit strategy had already been written for me, years ago, by an old man who saw everything, every other Saturday. I bought a ticket for the Greyhound bus that rumbled its way out of the city limits. The fare was exactly $12.50, a sum I scraped together from the tips I hid in my shoe. That bus ride was not just a commute. It was a decompression chamber. It was the only time in my week when I could exhale without worrying that my breath was taking up too much space. The bus took me 40 miles north to a small town called Maple Grove. It was a place that time seemed to have forgotten, full of weeping willow trees and storefronts that hadn't changed since the 80s. My grandfather, Henry Caldwell, lived at the end of a long gravel driveway in a wooden house that smelled of cedar, pipe tobacco, and old paper. Grandpa Henry was the only family I had left. He was my mother's father, a retired structural engineer with hands that were always stained with ink and a mind that worked like a steel trap. While my father's house was a showroom of white leather and glass surfaces that I was terrified to touch, Grandpa's house was a sanctuary of clutter. There were stacks of National Geographic magazines towering in the corners, shelves groaning under the weight of history books, and black and white photographs framed on every wall. When I walked through his front door, the dynamic of my existence shifted. In Aurora, I was a servant. I was a problem to be managed. I was the ghost in the hallway. But in Maple Grove, Grandpa would look up from his armchair, take off his reading glasses, and look me directly in the eye. "How are you really, Madeline?" he would ask. He never asked about my grades first. He never asked if I had finished my chores. He never asked what I had done to be helpful to the family. He asked about me, and he waited for the answer. It was terrifying at first. I did not know how to answer him because I had spent so long pretending I did not have feelings. But over time, the walls came down. I sat on his worn-out rug and drank the tea he brewed, and I let myself be a person. Grandpa Henry was observant in a way that was almost unnerving. He saw things I tried desperately to hide. One afternoon, when I was 16, I was helping him organize his bookshelf. I reached up to grab a heavy volume of encyclopedias, and my sleeve slid down. 3 days prior, at a dinner party my stepmother Victoria had hosted, I had accidentally knocked over a glass of red wine. It hadn't shattered, and only a few drops had hit the tablecloth. But Victoria had reacted with a swift, silent violence. Under the cover of the tablecloth, while smiling at her guests, she had reached over and gripped my forearm. She had squeezed with a force that felt like she was trying to crush the bone, holding it for a full minute while continuing her conversation about summer vacations. The bruise was a dark, ugly purple, shaped perfectly like 4 fingers and a thumb. Grandpa Henry saw it. He didn't gasp. He didn't shout. He simply reached out and gently took my wrist. He pushed the sleeve up further, his old, papery fingers tracing the outline of the mark. The silence in the room grew heavy, filled with the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. "Did you fall?" he asked quietly. I looked at the floor. "No." "Did you walk into a door?" "No." He let go of my hand, but he didn't look away. His eyes, usually soft, turned hard and flinty. "There is something in your eyes that looks like your mother in the old days," he said, his voice rough with an emotion I couldn't place. "Before her light went out." I froze. We rarely spoke of my mother's final years, the years when she had withered away in that house, silent and sad. I realized then that he knew. He knew that the darkness in that house hadn't started with Victoria, or perhaps that Victoria was just a new, more aggressive form of a darkness that had always been attracted to my father's weakness. He didn't ask who did it. He knew, and in his silence, I felt a fierce, protective anger radiating from him that comforted me more than any words could have. From that day on, our visits became more practical. I started helping him with his life administration. His eyesight was failing, so I took over his correspondence. I paid his bills online. I read him letters from the bank, and I typed out long, rambling emails to his old engineering buddies. I found a strange comfort in the order of it. Numbers made sense. Budgets were logical. Unlike the emotional minefield of my home, where the rules changed every hour, the numbers in Grandpa's bank account were solid and true. One afternoon, after I'd spent 2 hours reconciling his checkbook and finding a billing error that saved him $200, he laughed. It was a dry, rasping sound. "You have a mind for this, Maddie," he said, leaning back in his chair. "If I had a company, you would be my chief financial officer already. You are sharper than half the men I used to work with." I beamed. It was the first time anyone had told me I was good at something that wasn't cleaning. Then, his expression turned serious. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "In that house," he said, nodding toward the south, toward Aurora, "do people let you keep your money?" I hesitated. I picked at a loose thread on the rug. I have a savings account, I said. Or I did. Did? It disappears sometimes, I admitted, my voice barely a whisper. Victoria says it is for household expenses, or for Logan's sports. She says I need to contribute. Grandpa Henry sat back slowly. He looked out the window at the gray sky. He didn't say anything for a long time. When he finally spoke, he wasn't talking to me, but to the air itself. Adults who borrow money from children, he muttered, usually do not stop unless they are stopped. He turned back to me. Do they pay it back? They say they will, I said, but they forget. They do not forget. Madeline, he said firmly. They choose not to remember. There is a difference. We drank our tea in silence. I watched him thinking. I could almost see the gears turning in his head. The engineer assessing a structural failure and calculating the necessary reinforcements. Tell me about the boy, he said suddenly. Logan? I told him everything. I didn't paint a pretty picture. I told him about the little king. I told him about the private coaches, the expensive camps, the way my father looked at Logan like he was the second coming of Christ. I told him how Logan would leave his muddy cleats in the hallway for me to clean, and how he would laugh when I asked him to move them. Grandpa didn't look shocked. He didn't look angry at Logan. He looked sad. It is a tragedy, he said softly. For me? I asked. For him, Grandpa replied. And for you? Of course, but mostly for him. Boys who grow up being taught that they are kings will find it very hard to learn how to walk like normal people. When the real world hits him, Maddie, and it will hit him, he will shatter like glass. You are being forged in fire. You are iron. Iron bends, but it does not break easily. That perspective shifted something inside me. I stopped looking at Logan with pure envy and started looking at him with a strange kind of pity. He was a product of their vanity, just as I was a product of their neglect. A few months later, during one of my visits, there was another car in the driveway. It was a sensible sedan belonging to an elderly woman with sharp eyes and a briefcase. This is Ms. Harrington, Grandpa introduced us. She is an old friend and a very good lawyer. I made them coffee and then retreated to the kitchen to give them privacy, but the door was thin and the house was old. Sound carried. I heard words that I didn't fully understand but instinctively knew were important. Irrevocable trust. Protective clause. Testamentary will. Undue influence from family members. At one point, I heard Ms. Harrington ask, "Are you sure about the conditions?" Henry, it is very specific. If they find out, they will be furious. And I heard my grandfather's voice, stronger than it had been in years. Let them be furious. I am not leaving my legacy to be eaten by sharks. I am leaving it to the one who knows how to swim. When Ms. Harrington left, she looked at me with a gaze that was assessing but kind. She shook my hand firmly. It was a pleasure to meet you, Madeline. I suspect we will be seeing more of each other. After she was gone, Grandpa called me into the study. He held out a small, polished wooden box. It was made of walnut, smooth and warm to the touch. Open it, he said. Inside, there was no jewelry, there was no money, there was just a photograph. It was an old, black and white picture. It showed Grandpa, years younger, standing next to a swing set. On the swing was my mother, laughing with her head thrown back, looking radiant and free, and in her lap was a baby, me. We looked happy, we looked safe. I turned the photo over. On the back, in Grandpa's spidery handwriting, were 4 words. Remember who sees you. You feel invisible in that house, Maddie, Grandpa said, placing his hand over mine on the box. I know you do, but you are not invisible to me, and you were not invisible to her. Keep this box. Put it somewhere safe. And when you feel like you are disappearing, you look at it. I hugged him then. I hugged him so hard I was afraid I might break his fragile ribs. But he hugged me back with surprising strength. Thank you, Grandpa, I whispered. I didn't know it was the beginning of a goodbye. Grandpa Henry died 6 months later. It was a stroke. It happened fast, massive and catastrophic. I was 19 years old. I got the call at the bookstore. I ran out without telling my manager, catching a cab that cost me $40 I didn't have. When I got to the hospital, he was already fading. The machines were beeping that slow, rhythmic cadence that signals the end. He couldn't move much, but his eyes found mine the moment I walked into the room. I sat by his bed, holding his hand. It felt dry and cool, like autumn leaves. "I am here, Grandpa," I choked out. "I am here." He squeezed my fingers. It was a weak flutter, but I felt it. He tried to speak. I leaned in close, my ear hovering over his lips. "Maddie," he rasped. Every breath was a struggle. "I am listening." "If one day," he wheezed, pausing to gather the last of his strength, "if one day you see everyone turning against you, remember that I have prepared for that day." "What do you mean?" I asked, tears streaming down my face. He didn't answer. His eyes drifted shut. A small smile touched his lips, as if he knew a secret that gave him peace. He took one more breath, and then the machine whined a long, high-pitched tone that cut through my heart. The funeral was a farce. It was held in Maple Grove, but Victoria turned it into a performance art piece. She wore a black designer dress and a veil, sobbing loudly into a lace handkerchief. She clung to my father, accepting condolences from people she had never met, talking about what a wonderful, generous man Henry was. I stood in the back, wearing a simple black dress I had bought at a thrift store. I didn't cry. I couldn't cry in front of them. It felt like it would be an insult to Grandpa to share my grief with the people who had ignored him while he was alive. I just stood there, clutching the wooden box in my pocket, repeating his last words in my head. I have prepared for that day. As soon as the service was over, before the dirt was even fully shoveled onto the grave, Victoria dried her tears. She checked her watch. "Come on, Maddie," she hissed, grabbing my elbow. "We have to go." "I want to stay," I said. "I want to say goodbye." "We don't have time," she snapped, her voice low and venomous. "Logan has a history exam tomorrow and he is failing. He needs you to tutor him tonight. Get in the car." She dragged me away from the grave. My father was already in the driver's seat, checking his emails. I was shoved into the back seat of the luxury SUV. I felt hollowed out. I felt entirely alone in the world. As the car pulled away, kicking up dust from the cemetery road, I looked out the rear window. Standing by the gate, next to a black sedan, was Ms. Harrington. She wasn't looking at the grave. She wasn't looking at the other mourners. She was looking directly at me. Her expression was grim, unsmiling, and focused. She watched our car drive away, her gaze locking with mine through the glass. She didn't wave. She simply nodded once, a sharp, decisive movement. It wasn't a nod of comfort. It was a nod of acknowledgement. It was the look a general gives a soldier before the battle begins. I turned back around, facing the back of Victoria's head. I touched the wooden box in my pocket. Grandpa was gone, but as we drove back toward the house that hated me, I realized that he hadn't left me defenseless. He had left me a plan. I just had to wait for the right time to find it. It had been exactly 365 days since the earth closed over Grandpa Henry's casket. The house was vibrating with manic energy, but not because we were mourning, we were celebrating. Logan had just been named the most valuable player of the Regional High School Basketball League, and the Rhodes household was in full production mode for the awards banquet. I was in the kitchen, polishing 50 silver forks for the pre-party dinner, when the doorbell rang. Usually, I was the one expected to answer it, but the delivery man was insistent. Through the frosted glass, I saw the uniform of a courier. When I opened the door, he looked at his clipboard and then at me. "I have a package for a Miss Madeline Rhodes," he said. "Restricted delivery. I need to see identification, and she has to sign for it personally." Victoria was in the living room arranging lilies. "Who is it, Maddie?" she called out, her voice distracted. "Just a package," I called back. I stepped out onto the porch, pulling the door shut behind me. My heart hammered against my ribs as I showed the courier my driver's license. He handed me a thick, rigid envelope with a red confidential stamp across the front. The return address was Harrington and Associates, attorneys at law. I signed the digital pad with a shaking hand. As soon as the truck pulled away, I shoved the envelope under my oversized sweatshirt and went straight upstairs to my room, locking the door. Inside the envelope was a letter on heavy cream-colored paper. The header was embossed. Dear Madeline, per the instructions of the late Henry Caldwell, this letter is to inform you of the existence of the Caldwell Family Trust and a sealed evidentiary dossier, referred to herein as the folder. Your grandfather stipulated that these documents were to remain in the secure custody of my firm until one of two conditions was met. 1. You reached the age of 23. 2. My office received credible indication of significant familial duress or financial coercion. The folder contains sensitive financial records, personal correspondence, and legal instruments that grant you sole executory power over specific assets. Access is restricted exclusively to you. Any attempt by a third party to force access or compel you to sign over these rights is classified under the terms of the trust as abusive conduct. Please contact my office immediately to arrange a private viewing. I sat on the edge of my bed, the paper trembling in my hands. A trust. A folder. Grandpa Henry had not just left me a box with a photo. He had left me a contingency plan. The phrase significant familial duress stuck in my throat. He knew. Even from the grave. He knew exactly what was happening. I hid the letter inside my pillowcase, my mind racing. I was only 21. I had 2 years to go before the age requirement. But the duress clause, that was subjective. That was open to interpretation. I went back downstairs to finish the forks, my face a mask of calm. An hour later, the landline in the kitchen rang. Victoria was standing right next to it, mixing a pitcher of iced tea. She picked up the receiver before I could move. Rhodes Residence, Victoria speaking, she said, her voice dripping with her trademark charm. I watched her back as she listened. Suddenly, her posture stiffened. The hand stirring the tea stopped moving. I am sorry. Who is this? She asked, her voice dropping a fractured octave. Ms. Harrington? Henry's lawyer? My stomach dropped. Ms. Harrington must have called to confirm I received the letter. A folder? Victoria said. The charm was gone now, replaced by a sharp, brittle edge. What do you mean? A folder for Madeline. She is a child. Any legal matters concerning her should go through her father. We are her guardians. Silence. Ms. Harrington was likely telling her, in polite legalese, to back off. Trust? Victoria whispered the word like it was a curse. Her knuckles were white on the receiver. No, I do not think you understand. Henry was unwell at the end. We need to review those documents before... She stopped. Ms. Harrington must have hung up or cut her off. Victoria slowly lowered the phone. She stood there for a long moment, staring at the wall. When she turned around, her face was pale, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and fury that I had never seen before. She looked at me. For a second, she looked at me not as a nuisance, but as a threat. Maddie, she said, her voice unnervingly soft. Did you receive a letter today? I polished a fork, keeping my eyes on the silver. A letter? No, just a package of catalogs for the neighbors. She studied me, her eyes narrowing. She didn't believe me. That evening, after Logan had gone out with his friends to celebrate, Victoria called a family meeting. My father poured himself a scotch, a double, which he usually only did when the stock market crashed. He sat in his leather armchair, looking grave. Victoria sat on the edge of the sofa, her hands clasped so tightly in her lap that her fingertips were blue. Maddie, sit down, my father said. I sat on the ottoman, keeping my distance. Your mother. Victoria tells me that Henry's lawyer called today, Daniel began, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. Apparently, your grandfather left some additional paperwork, a folder of some sort. Okay, I said neutrally. Now, honey, Victoria interjected, leaning forward. We know how much you loved your grandfather. But we also know that in his last year, he was not himself. He was confused. He had paranoid episodes. You saw that, right? I looked at her. I remembered Henry's sharp, clear eyes. I remembered his steel-trap mind balancing checkbooks and spotting bruises. He seemed fine to me, I said. He hid it well, Daniel said quickly. The point is, he may have written things down or made plans that do not reflect reality or the best interests of this family. He took a long sip of his drink. This trust the lawyer mentioned. Money is a complicated thing. Maddie, it tears families apart, and right now, with Logan starting Duke in the fall, the tuition costs are astronomical. We are all pitching in. We are a team. If there is money, Victoria said, her voice trembling slightly, it was obviously meant for the family pot. Henry would have wanted to support Logan's future. He would not have wanted it locked away. So, my father said, setting his glass down, when you go to see this lawyer, I will come with you. We will get this sorted out, sign the necessary release forms, and move the assets into the main family account where they can be managed properly, for everyone's benefit. It wasn't a question, it was a directive. I looked at them. I saw the desperation in Victoria's eyes. I saw the entitlement in my father's posture. The letter said I have to go alone, I lied. It is a security protocol. If anyone else comes, they won't open the vault. That is ridiculous, Victoria snapped. We are your parents. I will ask Ms. Harrington, I said, standing up. But I have to go see what it is first. I mean, it might just be old photos or letters. It is not just photos, Victoria muttered, almost to herself. I will make the appointment for Tuesday, I said, and walked out of the room before they could argue further. I didn't go upstairs. I went to the kitchen to get water, then tiptoed back to the hallway, pressing myself against the wall just outside the living room door. She knows something, Victoria hissed. Her voice was no longer soft. It was venomous. Did you see her face? She is playing dumb. Calm down, Vic, my father said. It is just a trust. We can contest it. We can prove Henry was mentally incompetent. It is not the money I am worried about, you idiot. Victoria's voice rose to a sharp whisper. It is the folder. Harrington said there is a folder of records. If Henry was tracking what we were doing, if he has paper trails. He was an old man in a cabin, Daniel scoffed. What could he possibly have? He was an engineer, Daniel. He noticed everything. If he documented the transfers, if he documented the loans we took out in her name. My breath hitched in my throat. Loans, plural. If she gets that folder and actually reads it, Victoria continued, her voice dropping to a terrified growl. All our plans are gone. The financing for the expansion, the car for Logan, everything. We could be looking at legal trouble. Daniel, real trouble. She won't read it, Daniel said dismissively. She is Maddie. She does what she is told. We will pressure her. We will tell her that if she keeps it, she is disowned. She is too weak to be on her own. I hope you are right, Victoria said, because if that little girl opens that file, she is going to burn this house down. I backed away slowly, my heart pounding so hard I thought they would hear it through the walls. They weren't just borrowing my savings. They had taken out loans in my name. They had committed fraud. And Grandpa Henry had the receipts. Tuesday morning, I called in sick to the bookstore. I took the bus downtown, wearing my best blouse and a pair of slacks I usually saved for church. The offices of Harrington and Associates were located in a high-rise building that smelled of lemon polish and money. The receptionist led me back to a corner office that overlooked the city skyline. Ms. Harrington was waiting for me. She stood up when I entered, her expression grave but welcoming. Madeline, she said, you look like him. She motioned for me to sit in the leather chair opposite her massive oak desk. She didn't waste time with small talk. She reached down and unlocked a heavy metal drawer in her credenza. She pulled out a thick, expandable file folder. It was navy blue, tied with a white string. On the cover, in Grandpa's handwriting, it simply said, "For Madeline, The truth. Your grandfather spent the last 2 years of his life compiling this, Ms. Harrington said, placing her hand on the file. He came to me because he was worried he wouldn't live long enough to protect you himself. What is in it? I asked. My voice sounded thin in the large room. Everything, she said. First, the trust. Henry liquidated his remaining assets, his retirement accounts, the sale of a patent he held from the 80s, and placed $250,000 into an irrevocable trust for you. It is locked. Your father cannot touch it. Your stepmother cannot touch it. It is yours for education, housing, or starting a life. $250,000. The number was so large it didn't feel real. It felt like monopoly money. But that is the good news, Ms. Harrington said, her tone darkening. The rest of the folder is difficult. She untied the string and opened the flap. She slid a stack of papers toward me. These are bank records, she explained, pointing to highlighted rows. Your grandfather hired a forensic accountant privately. He traced the flow of money from your father's business. You can see here. Large sums transferred to accounts solely in Victoria's name, labeled as consulting fees. But the dates correspond perfectly with times they told you the business was struggling. She flipped the page. And this, she said, her voice hard, this is the part that constitutes criminal activity. These are loan applications, 3 of them, 2 credit cards, and a small personal line of credit. I looked at the applications. They were in my name, Madeline Rhodes. The Social Security number was mine. But the signature at the bottom was a looped, elegant scrawl that I recognized instantly. It wasn't mine. It was a forgery, but a lazy one. They opened these when you turned 18, Ms. Harrington said. They have been cycling debt through them to keep their credit scores high while ruining yours. You currently owe approximately $12,000 to creditors you have never met. I felt sick. The room spun. All the times they called me a parasite. All the times they said I was a burden. Meanwhile, they were using my identity as a life raft. And finally, Ms. Harrington said, pulling out a sealed white envelope from the very back of the folder. He wanted you to read this last. I took the envelope. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely tear it open. It was a handwritten letter from Henry. The ink was shaky, written perhaps only weeks before he died. My dearest Maddie, if you are reading these lines, it means they have gone too far. It means my worst fears have come to pass, and the people who should have nurtured you have instead decided to consume you. I watched them for years. I saw how they dimmed your light. I saw how they made you feel small so they could feel big. I stayed silent too long because I thought I could keep the peace. But peace without justice is just oppression. The documents in this folder are not just paper. They are evidence. They are the proof that you are not crazy. You are not selfish. And you are not wrong. You have been the victim of a long con, my dear. Victoria has used your father's weakness and her own greed to build a castle on sand, and they used your back as the foundation. This folder is your shield and your sword. Do not give it to anyone. Do not let them guilt you into handing it over. It is the only leverage you have. Use the money to leave. Use the evidence to force them to clear your name. They will tell you that family is everything, but family is not blood. Maddie, family is how we treat each other, and they have forfeited the right to call you family. Be brave. I am watching. Love, Grandpa. I put the letter down. The tears finally came, hot and fast, dripping onto the polished oak desk. But they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of rage. Pure, cold, clarifying rage. I looked up at Ms. Harrington. What do I do? I asked. We have options, she said calmly. We can file a police report for identity theft. We can sue for fraud. Or we can use this to negotiate a complete severance. They pay off the debt. They sign over any claim to you, and you walk away. I touched the folder. It felt heavy, like a brick or a weapon. They are having a party, I said quietly. For Logan, they are buying him a car. They are using the trust money, or they think they are, to buy it. Ms. Harrington raised an eyebrow. They cannot access the trust. It is locked. They don't know that yet, I said. They think they can bully me into signing it over. I stood up, closing the folder and tying the string tight. I am not going to the police yet, I said. I am going to go home, and I am going to wait. Wait for what? Ms. Harrington asked. For them to ask for the money, I said. Grandpa said this is a sword. I think I need to let them run onto it themselves. I walked out of that office a different person than the one who entered. I walked in as a victim. I walked out as the executioner. The folder was tucked under my arm, invisible to the world, but burning against my side. I took the bus home, staring out the window at the passing city. When I got back to the house, Victoria was in the kitchen, looking frantic. Well, she demanded as I walked in. What was it? What did the lawyer say? I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had forged my signature, stolen my childhood, and tried to erase my future. I smiled. It was a small, terrified smile, or at least, that is what I made it look like. It was just some old bonds, I lied, clutching my bag tight, and some letters. He left me a little money for school, but Ms. Harrington said I have to wait to access it. Victoria's shoulders sagged with relief. The panic vanished from her eyes, replaced by that familiar, predatory calculation. Oh, sweetie, she said, walking over and hugging me. I stood rigid in her arms. That is wonderful. We can figure out the details later. I am just glad it wasn't anything complicated. Me too, I whispered into her expensive silk blouse. Just wait, I thought. Just wait until you see what is really in the folder. The atmosphere in the house changed the moment I brought the invisible weight of that folder through the front door. It was no longer just a cold house. It was a hunting ground, and I was the prey they were trying to lure into a trap. Victoria was the first to change tactics. For years, she had looked at me as if I were a stain on her pristine carpet. Now, suddenly, I was her daughter. The morning after my visit to the lawyer, I woke up to the smell of cinnamon and caramelized sugar. I walked into the kitchen to find Victoria flipping pancakes, my favorite kind, with blueberries, which she hadn't made since I was 8 years old. Good morning, sweetheart, she chirped, turning around with a spatula in hand. Her smile was bright, too bright, like a camera flash that leaves spots in your vision. Sit down. I made you breakfast. You have been looking so pale lately. I thought you needed some pampering. I sat down, wary. Thank you. She poured me orange juice, hovering over my shoulder. You know, Maddie, your father and I were talking last night. We realized we have been so busy with Logan's graduation that we haven't spent enough quality time with you. We want you to feel included, especially now that you have this responsibility from your grandfather. There it was, the pivot. It is a lot for a young girl to handle, she continued, sliding a plate in front of me. Legal documents, bonds, taxes. It gives me a headache just thinking about it. But you know, that is what family is for, to share the burden. She sat across from me, leaning her chin on her hand. We were thinking, since the trust is technically family money, intended by Henry for all his grandchildren, it would be so much simpler if we pooled it. That way, we can invest it properly. Maybe even get you that new laptop you wanted. I cut into my pancake. It tasted like ash. I don't need a new laptop, Victoria. But you will, she said, her voice hardening just a fraction. For the future, for the family. When the sugar didn't work, my father tried logic, or rather, his twisted version of it. He called me into his home office that evening. He was sitting behind his massive mahogany desk, surrounded by framed photos of Logan winning trophies. There were no photos of me. Madeline, have a seat, he said, gesturing to the chair that was intentionally lower than his. I want to talk to you about legacy, he began, steepling his fingers. You see, when I married Victoria, I took on a lot. I saved you, in a way, your mother. She was a wonderful woman, but she left us in a difficult position. I rebuilt this family. I provided this house. this life. I saved you from a very lonely existence." I stared at him. He hadn't saved me. He had erased me. "And now," he said, leaning forward, "you have a chance to pay that back, to show gratitude. You are young. Maddie, 21 is a child in the eyes of the financial world. You do not know how to manage assets. If you try to handle this trust alone, the taxes will eat you alive. You will lose it all." "I am good with numbers, Dad," I said quietly. "Grandpa taught me." His face twitched. "Grandpa was a senile old man who liked to play games. I am a businessman. I am telling you, for your own good, you need to sign the management rights over to me. It is the only rational choice. Unless you want to be responsible for this family struggling while you sit on a pile of cash you don't understand." "I understand plenty," I said. "Do not be insolent," he snapped, the mask of reason slipping. "I am your father. You owe me this." Then there was Logan. He didn't bother with charm or logic. He just went straight to entitlement. I was in the living room reading a book when he walked in, tossing his gym bag onto the coffee table right in front of me. "So," he said, looming over the sofa, "Mom says you are holding out on us." "I am not holding out on anything. Logan, it is my inheritance." He laughed, a sharp barking sound. "Yours? You don't need money. Maddie, look at you. You have no ambition. You work at a bookstore. You just need a place to sleep and food to eat, which we give you. I am the one going to Duke. I am the one who is going to be somebody. I am the future of this name. The money is obviously meant for me." "Grandpa left it to me," I said, not looking up from my page. "Grandpa was crazy," Logan sneered. "And if you think you are going to keep that car from me, you are crazy too. You are nothing without us. Maddie, just a maid with a different last name." The tension in the house tightened with every passing hour. It felt like the air pressure before a tornado. 2 days later, Victoria made her move. I came home from work to find her sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of papers. She had a pen in her hand and a glass of wine nearby. "Maddie, darling, come here," she called out. "I have some great news. I spoke to our family accountant, and he drafted up some simple paperwork to help you." She slid the stack toward me. "It is just a standard power of attorney. It authorizes me to handle the administrative side of the trust for you, dealing with the lawyers, the filings. You won't have to lift a finger. Just sign here, here, and here." I picked up the document. I scanned the dense legal text. It wasn't administrative. It was a plenary power of attorney. It granted Victoria Rhodes unlimited and irrevocable power to access, liquidate, and transfer any assets in my name. If I signed this, I was handing her the keys to the vault. I was handing her the sword Grandpa had left me. Handle first. I put the paper down. "I cannot sign this, Victoria." The room went deadly silent. The hum of the refrigerator seemed to stop. "Excuse me?" she asked. Her voice was very quiet. "I cannot sign it. Ms. Harrington advised me not to sign anything without her review." Victoria stood up. She walked around the table until she was standing right next to me. She smelled of expensive perfume and something sour, like fear. "You are making a mistake," she whispered. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking at the wall, as if talking to a ghost. "We are trying to be nice, Maddie. We are trying to include you, but you are making it very difficult." She leaned down, her lips brushing my ear. "Do not make this hard. Your father has high blood pressure. He is under so much stress with the business. If you cause a scene, if you cause him to have a heart attack, that will be on you. Do you want to kill your father, Maddie?" I shivered. It was a masterful manipulation, turning my self-preservation into a murder weapon. "I am not signing," I repeated, my voice shaking but firm. She pulled back, her eyes cold and dead. "Fine, do it the hard way. But do not expect us to catch you when you fall." The hard way started immediately. My father stopped speaking to me. He would look through me as if I were made of glass. When he did speak, it was a threat. "We are reviewing the household budget," he announced at dinner, staring at his steak. Since Maddie is so wealthy now, apparently, I do not see why we should be paying for her phone, or her health insurance, or her food. I pay for my own food, I said. Not all of it, he countered. You use our electricity, our water. If you are going to be an independent financial entity, then be one. But do not expect to live here for free if you are not contributing to the greater good. The greater good being Logan's car? I asked. He slammed his hand on the table. The plates jumped. The greater good is this family. You selfish, ungrateful girl. I should have left you with your mother's crazy relatives. Later that night, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Logan, sent from his room down the hall. Logan, you better not ruin this for me. If you mess up my car or my tuition, I will tell everyone at school that you are a drug addict. I will tell them you stole from Mom. I will make sure you can't get a job anywhere in this town. I stared at the screen. This wasn't just a dysfunctional family anymore. This was a cartel. They were a coordinated system, and I was the resource they were fighting over. I went into the bathroom, locked the door, and turned on the shower so they wouldn't hear me. I sat on the edge of the tub and typed an email to Ms. Harrington on my phone. Subject: Urgent. Hardship clause. Ms. Harrington, they are escalating. My stepmother tried to make me sign a full power of attorney today. My father is threatening to kick me out. My brother is blackmailing me. They are demanding access to the trust. I think this qualifies as the significant familial duress Grandpa talked about. I want to trigger the hardship clause. I want to move everything. Please tell me how. I hit send and waited, watching the steam curl around the mirror. 10 minutes later, a reply popped up. Madeline, based on your description, the criteria have absolutely been met. I am preparing the motions now. Under the hardship clause, we can immediately petition to sever all financial guardianship. I will open a new, secure account in your name, only at a separate institution tomorrow. Stay safe. Do not sign anything. I felt a wave of relief so strong it almost made me dizzy. I had an exit strategy. But Victoria sensed I was slipping away. Predators always know when the prey is about to bolt. The next evening, the pretense of civility evaporated completely. I was in the kitchen getting a glass of water. Logan was sitting at the counter eating a sandwich. Victoria was pacing. She is hiding something, Victoria said to Logan, pointing a manicured finger at me. Look at her. Smug. She thinks she is better than us. I am just getting water, I said. You are a leech, Victoria spat. You have lived off us for 20 years. You took the best room. You took our food. And now, when we need a little help, when your brother needs a boost to ensure his future, you hoard it? Because of some paper an old man wrote? It is not your money, I said, turning to face her. It is my money, she screamed. I earned it. I put up with your father. I put up with this house. I put up with you. I deserve that compensation. She had finally said it. I was a job she had endured, and the trust fund was her severance package. You are pathetic, Logan muttered, chewing with his mouth open. Just give it up, Maddie. You are going to lose anyway. You always lose. Not this time, I said. My father walked in then, attracted by the shouting. What is going on? Your daughter, Victoria seethed, is stealing from this family. I am protecting what is mine, I said, my voice rising. Grandpa left that trust to me, specifically to me, because he knew you would do this. He knew you would try to strip mine me to pay for Logan's golden life. My father's face turned a dark, ugly shade of red. He crossed the room in 2 long strides and slammed his hand down on the granite countertop, inches from my hand. Enough, he roared. I will not have you speak about your brother or your mother that way. You are a guest in this house, Madeline, and guests can be removed. I am your daughter, I whispered. Then act like it, he yelled, leaning into my face. Sign the papers, release the funds, or I swear to God, I will make you understand what it really means to be alone in this world. You will not destroy this family because of your petty jealousy. He was breathing hard, his eyes bulging. For the first time, I saw the potential for physical violence in him, fueled by Victoria's whispering and his own financial desperation. "I am not jealous," I said, backing away toward the door. "I am just awake." I ran up to my room and barricaded the door with a chair. I could hear them downstairs, arguing, planning, their voices rising through the floorboards like smoke. I looked at the folder, hidden deep inside my mattress. They thought they were breaking me. They didn't realize they were just giving me more evidence. Every threat, every text message, every scream, it was all fuel. I wasn't going to just leave. I was going to wait for the party. I was going to wait for the moment they thought they had won, and then I was going to show them exactly what I was worth. The fear that had paralyzed me for a decade evaporated the moment my father slammed his hand on the table. It was replaced by a cold, mechanical precision that I had inherited directly from Henry Caldwell. I stopped crying. I stopped pleading. I realized that you cannot negotiate with terrorists, even if they share your last name. You can only dismantle them. The next morning, I began my counteroffensive. I did not do it from the house. The house was compromised territory. Instead, I turned the dusty break room of the Dusty Spine bookstore into my war room. During my lunch breaks, while Mrs. Holloway watched the front counter, I sat on a milk crate amidst stacks of unsold paperbacks and dialed Ms. Harrington. "Do it," I said into the phone, keeping my voice low. "Trigger the hardship clause." "Are you certain, Madeline?" Ms. Harrington asked. "Once we execute this, the trust becomes a fortress. We are moving the assets from the holding account into a completely new institution that has no affiliation with your father's banking history. It will send up a flare. They will know the money is gone when they try to query the balance." "They are going to find out anyway," I said. "My stepmother is drafting a power of attorney she expects me to sign. They are already spending the money in their heads. I need it to be gone before they try to force my hand physically." "Consider it done," Ms. Harrington said. "I am also setting you up with a forensic financial advisor. We need to document every penny they have taken from you since you were a minor. And Madeline, I am connecting you with a contact at the Domestic Violence Support Center, just so you have a safety plan." The strategy was simple: gather, document, destroy. I bought a second, cheap smartphone with cash and kept it hidden in a hollowed-out space inside my locker at work. I used it to photograph everything. I took pictures of the text messages Logan sent me. "If you don't sign the papers, I'm going to tell Dad you stole his watch. Mom says you're ruining my birthday. Watch your back." I took pictures of the revised budget my father had left on the counter, where he had circled my name and written liability next to it in red ink. But the most damning evidence came from the voice recorder app on my main phone. I started leaving my phone in rooms where they were talking, screen down, recording running. I captured hours of banal conversation, but then I struck gold. It was a Tuesday night. Victoria and Daniel were in the kitchen, drinking wine. I was upstairs, but my phone was accidentally left on the kitchen island behind a fruit bowl. I listened to the playback later with headphones, my heart racing. "The dealer called today," Victoria's voice said, clear and sharp. "The matte black finish is ready. It is $85,000. Daniel, we need the deposit by Friday." "We don't have the liquidity until the quarter closes," my father replied, sounding tired. "We have the trust," Victoria insisted. "Maddie is breaking. I can see it. She is terrified. Once she signs that power of attorney, I can wire the deposit directly from the custodial account. We will frame it as an investment in a depreciating asset if the IRS asks. Or we just say it was a gift from her to her brother. Who is going to question a gift?" "It is risky, Vic," Daniel said. "If she talks to that lawyer, yo." "She won't," Victoria scoffed. "She is pathetic. She is too scared of losing us. She thinks if she buys us off, we will love her. It is sad, really, but we might as well use it." I saved the file. Evidence 01 Conspiracy to Defraud, MP3. I wasn't sad. I was vindicated. I needed more than just digital files, though I needed a witness. One afternoon, The bookstore was empty. Mrs. Holloway was behind the counter, pricing used hardcovers. She was a stern woman with gray hair and a no-nonsense attitude, but she had always been kind to me in her gruff way. I walked up to the counter and rolled up my sleeves. The bruises from where Victoria had grabbed me 3 days ago were fading, turning a sickly yellow green, but they were still visible. "Mrs. Holloway," I said. She looked up. Her eyes went to my arms instantly. She didn't gasp. She just put down her pricing gun. "Who did that?" she asked. "My family," I said. "I am gathering evidence. I might need to go to the police soon. If they ask, would you be willing to tell them what you have seen? Not just today, but over the years?" She looked me in the eye. "I have seen you come in here limping. I have seen you flinch when a customer raises a hand to wave. I have seen you crying in the break room more times than I can count." She reached out and covered my hand with hers. Her skin was rough like paper. "You just tell me when. Maddie," she said, "I will tell the police, the judge, and the Pope if I have to. You are a good girl. You do not deserve this." "Thank you," I whispered. That night, I sat on my bed with the folder Grandpa Henry had left me. I had read the letter a dozen times, but now I focused on the numbers. I spread the bank statements out on my quilt like a map of a crime scene. It was a sophisticated shell game. I found a transfer of $5,000 from my father's company account to a private account at a bank in Delaware. The account holder was listed as V. Rhodes Consulting. The date was June 12th. I froze. I remembered June 12th. That was the day my washing machine broke. That was the day Victoria had begged me for money, crying about how poor we were. They had $5,000 moving through the system that very day, and yet they stole my $400. It wasn't about need. It was about dominance. It was about taking from me to remind me that I owned nothing. I kept digging. I found the loans Ms. Harrington had mentioned. There was a personal loan for $10,000 taken out 2 years ago. The stated purpose was home improvement. The co-signer was Madeline Rhodes. I looked at the date on the application. I had been at school that day. I had never stepped foot in that bank. And then I saw the payment history. They had made the minimum payments for a year, and then stopped. The loan was currently 90 days past due. My credit score, which I hadn't even known existed, was likely being destroyed right now. I took a photo of the document. Then I called Miss Harrington. "I found the loan," I said. "They stopped paying it." "That is intentional," Ms. Harrington said, her voice icy. "It is called financial coercion. They destroy your credit so you cannot get an apartment, a car loan, or a credit card without them. They clip your wings so you have to stay in the nest." "It is slavery," I said, "with extra steps. If they continue to push you," Ms. Harrington said, "we are going to do more than just defend the trust. We are going to protect your name. We will file an affidavit of forgery. It will trigger a criminal investigation into your father and stepmother for identity theft and bank fraud." "I am ready," I said. "Wait," she cautioned. "You need a flashpoint. If we file now, they will claim it was a misunderstanding, that you gave verbal permission. We need an undeniable moment where they claim ownership of your assets in a public forum." I didn't have to wait long. The flashpoint was being printed on gold-embossed cardstock downstairs. It was the week before Logan's 18th birthday. The house was in chaos. Caterers were coming in and out. A DJ booth was being constructed in the backyard. Victoria was in her element, directing the florists like a general. "Maddie," she called out when I walked in. "Come here, darling." She was holding a clipboard. She looked manic, her eyes bright with adrenaline. "We have finalized the run of show for the party," she said, beaming. "It is going to be spectacular. Everyone is coming. The mayor might even stop by." "That is nice," I said. "And we have a special role for you," Daniel said. Walking in from the patio, he put a heavy hand on my shoulder. He was smiling, but his grip was tight, a warning. "We have decided to do the car reveal at 8 o'clock, he said, "right after the cake." "The car you bought with the trust money?" I asked innocently. The car the family bought, Victoria corrected sharply. And here's the beautiful part. We want you to present the keys. I stared at her. You want me to give him the keys? It sends the perfect message, Daniel said. It shows unity. It shows that you support your brother. It puts to rest any rumors that the neighbors might have heard about friction in the house. He squeezed my shoulder harder. You will stand up on the stage, he instructed. You will take the microphone. You will say how proud you are of Logan. And you will say that this car is a gift from you and the estate of Henry Caldwell, a blessing from the past to the future. It legitimizes the transaction, Victoria added, her eyes gleaming. If you say it is a gift in front of 200 people, nobody can claim later that we misused the funds. It is a public declaration of intent. I felt a chill run down my spine. It was brilliant, evil, but brilliant. If I stood up there and gave him the keys, I was verbally contracting the gift. I would be publicly consenting to the theft. If I tried to sue them later, they would produce the video of me smiling and handing over the keys. And if I don't? I asked. Victoria's smile vanished. She took a step closer. Then you are out, she whispered. Tonight, if you ruin this moment for Logan, if you embarrass us in front of our friends, your bags better be packed, and do not think for a second you will see a dime of that trust. We will tie you up in court for 20 years. We will bleed you dry until you are begging on the street. And, Daniel added, I will make sure every employer in this state knows you are a thief and a liar. I have connections. Maddie, I will ruin you. They stood there, flanking me, my father and my stepmother, the architect and the enforcer. I looked at them, and I thought about the folder. I thought about the forgery. I thought about the washing machine money. I realized that if I stayed silent one more time, if I let them write this script, I would die. Maybe not physically, but the part of me that was Madeline Rhodes, the part Grandpa Henry loved, would be extinguished forever. I would just be their appliance. I looked at Daniel's hand on my shoulder. Okay, I said. Daniel blinked. Okay. I will do it, I said. I will take the keys. I will go up on stage. I will say exactly what needs to be said. Victoria let out a breath she had been holding. She clapped her hands together. Oh, Maddie, I knew you would come around. She hugged me, her body stiff and artificial. You are doing the right thing, finally. Here is the speech, Daniel said, handing me a folded piece of paper. Memorize it. Do not deviate. I, Madeline Rhodes, am honored to present this gift. I took the paper. I will memorize it. Good girl, Daniel said, patting my cheek. It was a patronizing tap, the kind you give a dog that has finally learned to sit. I walked upstairs to my room. I locked the door. I unfolded the speech. I read the lies they had written for me. I am honored by Guillaume. Our family is so close. Logan deserves the world. I tore the paper in half. Then I tore it again. I dropped the pieces into my trash can. I wasn't going to read their script. I was going to write my own. I pulled the folder out from under my mattress. I checked the documents one last time. I checked the recordings on my phone. I checked the email from Ms. Harrington confirming the hardship transfer was pending and would clear within 24 hours. The party was tomorrow night. It was going to be a grand event. There would be champagne. There would be music. There would be a crowd of witnesses. Victoria wanted a show. I was going to give her a show. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked tired. I looked bruised. But in my eyes, there was a spark that hadn't been there since I was 10 years old. Remember who sees you, I whispered to my reflection. Tomorrow, everyone was going to see me, and for the first time, they weren't going to see the invisible daughter. They were going to see the storm. The afternoon sun draped over the Rhodes estate like a layer of heavy gold leaf, sealing everything in a suffocating perfection. It was 75 degrees, with a light breeze that rustled the expensive oak trees lining the perimeter of the backyard. To an outsider, it looked like a scene from a lifestyle magazine. To me, it looked like a stage set for a tragedy. Victoria had outdone herself. There were 300 balloons in gold and navy blue floating above the heated pool. A DJ from the city was spinning lo-fi beats that were trendy enough for Logan's friends, but quiet enough for Daniel's business partners to discuss golf handicaps. A catering team moved silently through the crowd with trays of truffle-infused sliders and shrimp cocktails, but Victoria had still insisted that I supervise the service. "Maddie, the ice bucket at the bar is getting low," she had hissed at me 20 minutes ago, pinching the back of my arm while smiling at the mayor's wife. "Fix it, and smile. You look like a funeral attendant." So I walked through the crowd like a ghost, invisible in plain sight. I was wearing the dress they had approved, a modest beige thing that blended into the patio furniture. I refilled ice. I straightened the linen tablecloths. I picked up discarded napkins. I played the role I had been cast in since I was 10 years old, the help. Logan was holding court near the pool. He was wearing a designer polo shirt that cost more than my monthly rent would be if I moved out. He was surrounded by his basketball teammates and a few girls who laughed too loudly at his jokes. He looked like a prince. He looked like a boy who had never heard the word no. I walked past him with a tray of empty glasses. A woman I didn't recognize, perhaps a colleague of my father, stopped me. "Excuse me," she said kindly. "You are the sister, right, Madeline?" I paused, surprised to be addressed directly. "Yes, I am Madeline." "It is a lovely party," she said. "Your father says you are working locally now? Do you have plans to go back to school? Or maybe travel?" I opened my mouth to answer, to tell her about my writing, about the folder, about the fire burning in my chest. But Logan stepped in before I could make a sound. He draped a heavy arm around my shoulders, leaning his weight on me as if I were a crutch. "Oh, Maddie is a homebody," Logan said, flashing his bright, practiced smile at the woman. "She is going to stay close. She helps the family out a lot. You know, keeping the domestic ship running. We would be lost without her. She is very reliable." He said reliable the way one describes an old pickup truck or a sturdy pair of boots. Useful, but not valuable. The woman smiled politely. "That is nice. Family is important." "Exactly," Logan said, squeezing my shoulder. "She knows her place, right, Maddie?" He laughed, and his friends laughed with him. I didn't laugh. I looked at his hand on my shoulder, at the Rolex watch my father had given him for graduation. I imagined grabbing his wrist and twisting it. Instead, I slid out from under his arm. "I have to check the dessert table," I said quietly. "Go get him, Tiger," Logan called after me, turning back to his admirers. I walked to the edge of the patio, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I touched the side of my dress, the hard rectangle of the folded paper. The speech Daniel had written for me was gone. I had left it in the trash, but the folder, the real folder, was safe in my room. The evidence was backed up. Ms. Harrington was waiting for my call. I looked across the lawn and saw Victoria check her watch. It was a diamond-encrusted timepiece that caught the sunlight. She caught Daniel's eye across the crowd and gave a sharp, almost imperceptible nod. It was time. The DJ lowered the volume of the music until it faded into a soft, ambient hum. "Ladies and gentlemen," Daniel's voice boomed out. He was standing on the raised decking near the back door, holding a microphone. He looked every inch the successful patriarch, tan, fit, radiating confidence. "If I could have everyone's attention for a moment," he said, flashing a charismatic grin. "We are so honored you could all be here to celebrate our son, Logan, 18 years ago. This young man came into our lives and changed everything." The crowd applauded polite, enthusiastic claps. Logan jogged up the steps to stand next to his father, looking humble and heroic. Victoria glided over to join them, completing the trinity. They looked perfect, the successful father, the beautiful mother, the golden son. "We are so proud of his achievements," Daniel continued. "MVP of the league, accepted to Duke, but success is not a solo journey. It takes a village, and it takes a family. We have all made sacrifices to get here." He paused for effect. "And speaking of family," Daniel said, his voice dropping to a reverent tone. "We cannot forget those who aren't here. My late father-in-law, Henry Caldwell, left a legacy for this family. He wanted to ensure that his grandchildren were taken care of. He believed in shared prosperity." I stood by the dessert table, my hands clenching into fists. Liar, I thought. He believed in protecting me from you. "And so," Daniel said, turning his gaze toward me, "we have a special surprise, a testament to that legacy, and we thought it was only fitting that Logan's sister, the one who has looked out for him all these years, does the honors." He beckoned me with his hand. "Madeline, come on up here." The crowd turned. 200 pairs of eyes swiveled toward me. I felt the heat of their gaze physically, like a sunburn. This was the trap. If I walked up there, if I played along, I was complicit. If I stayed where I was the difficult, sullen daughter ruining the moment. I took a deep breath. The air smelled of chlorine and expensive cologne. I walked toward the stairs. My legs felt heavy, as if I were walking through water. Victoria was beaming at me, but her eyes were hard little stones. She held out a small velvet box. Inside were the keys to the matte black sports car sitting in the driveway, hidden under a tarp. "Come here, sweetheart," she said, her voice amplified by the microphone Daniel was holding near her. I climbed the steps. I stood next to them. I felt small. I felt dirty. Daniel handed me the microphone. "Go ahead, Maddie. Tell him." I took the microphone. It was heavy and cold. I looked at the velvet box in Victoria's hand. Then I looked at Logan, who was wearing a smirk of expectant greed. He was already reaching for the box. I looked out at the crowd. I saw the neighbors who had ignored my bruises. I saw the teachers who had praised Logan while I struggled to pay for my own notebooks. I thought about the washing machine money. I thought about the forged loan documents. I thought about Grandpa Henry dying alone while they rushed me to the car. I raised the microphone to my lips. "Logan," I said. My voice shook slightly, then steadied. "Dad wants me to give you this car." "Awesome," Logan said, reaching out. "Thanks, sis." I pulled the microphone back. I did not take the box from Victoria. "But I cannot do that," I said. The smile on Daniel's face faltered. A ripple of confusion went through the crowd. "Because this car," I continued, my voice gaining strength, ringing out clear over the silent yard, "was not bought with family money. There is no family money. This car was bought using a trust fund my grandfather left specifically to me, without my permission." The silence that descended on the backyard was absolute. It was a vacuum. The birds seemed to stop singing. Victoria let out a strangled sound, half laugh, half gasp. She leaned in, covering the mic with her hand, her nails digging into my wrist. "You joke enough, Maddie," she hissed through her teeth, her face a mask of panic. "Take the box, now." I jerked my arm away. The movement was sharp, violent. The velvet box fell from her hand and clattered onto the wooden deck. "I am not joking," I said into the microphone. "I am not signing the release forms. Dad, I am not letting you use my name to take out any more loans. And I am definitely not giving him a car bought with my stolen inheritance." "Cut the mic," Daniel roared at the DJ. The sound cut out with a screech of feedback, but the silence of the crowd was loud enough that my voice still carried. "You forged my signature," I said, looking directly at Daniel. "You and Victoria. You stole my identity." Daniel's face turned a color I had never seen before, a deep, mottled purple. The veins in his neck bulged like cords. The mask of the benevolent father shattered, falling away to reveal the desperate, angry man beneath. "You ungrateful little bitch," he whispered, but in the quiet yard, it sounded like a shout. "I will not let you humiliate this family, not after everything I did for you." He stepped forward. I didn't flinch. I didn't back down. "You didn't do anything for me," I said. "You took everything from me." He moved faster than I expected. His hand came up, a wide, sweeping arc. Crack. The sound of his palm hitting my face was sickeningly loud. It echoed off the side of the house. The force of it knocked my head to the side, snapping my neck back. My cheek exploded in pain, a hot, searing fire that instantly brought tears to my eyes. The crowd gasped. Someone screamed. A glass shattered on the patio. I stumbled back, stunned. I tasted blood. Before I could regain my balance, Victoria was on me. She didn't slap me. She grabbed a handful of my hair at the root and yanked. "You ruined it!" she shrieked, her voice shrill and terrifying. "You ruined everything. You are nothing. You are worth nothing without us." She dragged my head down, her other hand clawing at my arm, her fingers sinking into the soft flesh of my bicep where the old bruises were just fading. She was trying to shake me, to hurt me, to erase me. "Get off me!" I screamed, finally fighting back. I shoved her. Daniel grabbed my arm then, twisting it behind my back. "Control her! She is having a breakdown!" he yelled to the crowd, trying to spin the narrative even as he assaulted me. "She is off her meds. Somebody call a doctor." "I am not crazy," I yelled, struggling against his grip. "Get your hands off me." I looked out at the crowd. They weren't just watching a family argument anymore. They were witnessing a crime. I saw Mrs. Gable, the neighbor, with her hand over her mouth. I saw Logan standing there, frozen, looking not at me, but at the car keys on the ground, as if that was the only tragedy occurring. "Let her go!" a man's voice shouted from the crowd. "Call 911, a woman screamed. Daniel didn't let go. He squeezed tighter, shaking me. "You apologize," he hissed in my ear. "You pick up those keys, and you apologize, or so help me God." My vision started to blur. The pain in my head was throbbing in time with my heartbeat. The blue of the pool and the gold of the balloons swirled together into a nauseating kaleidoscope. I looked at the sky. It was still sunny. It was still a beautiful day. I felt my knees give way. The world tilted sideways. The last thing I saw was Victoria's face, twisted into a snarl of pure hatred, and the terrified eyes of the guests realizing that the monster wasn't the girl on the stage. It was the family standing next to her. Then the darkness came, rushing in like a tide, and the sound of the party faded into the wail of a siren that was already screaming in my memory. The fluorescent lights of the emergency room were different from the ones in the ambulance. They were steady, unblinking, and brutally clinical. They left no shadows for secrets to hide in. I was sitting on the edge of a gurney in Trauma Bay 4. My dress, the beige one Victoria had chosen because it made me look demure, was ruined, stained with a mixture of spilled shrimp cocktail sauce and my own blood. My cheek felt like it had been packed with hot coals, and every time I turned my head, a sharp pain shot down my neck where Victoria had tried to scalp me. A doctor with tired eyes was photographing my injuries. "Turn to the left, please," he said gently. Click. "Now lift your arm. I need to document the bruising on the bicep." Click. Each shutter sound was a stamp of validation. For years, the abuse had been invisible. A whisper in the kitchen, a stolen bank account, a psychological game that left no marks. But tonight, they had been sloppy. Tonight, they had signed their names on my skin. "Blunt force trauma to the right zygomatic arch," the doctor dictated into a recorder. "Multiple contusions on the upper left arm consistent with a grip pattern. Laceration on the scalp due to hair traction. Patient states assault by family members." He lowered the recorder and looked at me. "We are required by law to report this, Miss Rhodes, but I see the police are already here." Officer Martinez stepped through the curtain. She was a petite woman, but she carried herself with a density of authority that filled the small space. She had a notepad in her hand and a look of fierce, controlled calm on her face. "How are you holding up, Madeline?" she asked. "I am dizzy," I admitted. My voice sounded thick, foreign to my own ears. "And I am cold." She grabbed a heated blanket from a warmer in the hallway and wrapped it around my shoulders. "That is the shock. It will pass. I need to ask you some questions about what happened at the residence. You can take your time." I pulled the blanket tighter. "They wanted me to give my brother a car. I said no. I told everyone the truth about the money." "And that is when your father struck you?" "Yes." And your stepmother? She grabbed my hair. She tried to. She said I was nothing. Officer Martinez wrote everything down. Her pen scratched against the paper, a rhythmic, grounding sound. When she finished, she looked up. You did nothing wrong, Madeline, she said firmly. I want you to hear that. You told the truth, and they reacted with violence. That is on them. It is a crime, plain and simple. They will say I fell, I said, the old fear creeping back in. They will say I was hysterical. They always have a story. Not this time, Martinez said. She flipped her notebook closed. We have already received 4 calls from neighbors who were at the party. They saw everything. One of them even filmed part of it on a phone. We have footage of your father striking you and your stepmother dragging you. Their story does not matter anymore. The evidence speaks for itself. I let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for a decade. I need to make a call, I said. I need my lawyer. I need Ms. Harrington. I will facilitate that, Martinez said. 40 minutes later, Ms. Harrington swept into the trauma bay like an avenging angel in a tweed suit. She didn't look at my bruised face with pity. She looked at it with a grim, tactical fury. She was carrying a thick leather briefcase. I got the call from the hospital, she said, setting the case down on the rolling table. I came straight here. Are you safe? For now, I said. I need the folder. Ms. Harrington, the real one. I need to open it all the way. I brought it, she said, and I brought the rest of the files from the vault. She unlocked the briefcase and pulled out the navy blue folder I had seen in her office, along with a second, thicker binder that I hadn't seen before. We are going to do this right now, she said. While the police are outside and the doctors are documenting the damage, we are going to burn their house down with paper. She opened the binder first. This is the amended will, she said, pointing to a document dated 6 months before Henry died. Your father and stepmother do not know this exists. They believe the old will, which left everything to the family estate, is the active one. I leaned in, squinting through my swollen eye. Read this clause, Miss Harrington said. I, Henry Caldwell, being of sound mind, do hereby bequeath my 15% minority shareholder stake in Rhodes Construction and Development solely to my granddaughter, Madeline Rhodes. I gasped. He left me shares in Dad's company? 15%. Ms. Harrington confirmed. It is a non-voting block, usually, but Henry added a caveat. If the company engages in unethical financial practices, or if the majority shareholder, your father, is under criminal investigation, the voting rights activate to protect the asset. She looked at me meaningfully. If we file charges for fraud and assault tonight, your father is under investigation. That means you suddenly have a vote in his company. You can demand an audit. You can freeze the accounts. He gave me the kill switch, I whispered. He gave you leverage, she corrected. And there is more. She pulled out a stack of printed emails. They were from Henry to Daniel, dated 3 years ago. Subject: Stop using her name. Daniel, I saw the credit inquiry on Madeline's report. She is 19. She does not need a line of credit for home renovations. If you forge her signature one more time, I will go to the district attorney myself. Consider this your only warning. Remove her name from those loans immediately. He knew, I said, tears pricking my eyes again. He tried to stop them. And look at the reply, Ms. Harrington said, flipping the page. There was no reply, just a red receipt. Daniel had opened it, ignored it, and continued to steal my identity. This proves intent, Ms. Harrington said, her voice hard as steel. It proves it wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a calculated, predatory pattern of behavior that they maintained despite being warned. In a court of law, this destroys any defense they might try to mount. Then she opened the blue folder, Henry's personal notes. It was like looking into my grandfather's mind. He had kept a diary. October 14th, Maddie's birthday. Victoria made her cook her own cake, laughed about it to the guests. Maddie smiled, but her eyes were dead. I need to get her out. November 2nd. Saw bruises on Maddie's arm again. Victoria claims she is clumsy. I know a grip mark when I see one. I am accelerating the trust fund setup. December 20th. Overheard Victoria telling Daniel that Maddie is an investment vehicle we can tap into. They are not treating her as a daughter. They are treating her as livestock. Reading his handwriting was painful, but it was also healing. I hadn't been crazy. I hadn't been oversensitive. Someone had seen it. Someone had validated my reality every single day, even if he couldn't speak it aloud at the time. With the assault tonight, Ms. Harrington said, closing the folder. Plus these documents. We have everything we need. We are not just going to ask for a restraining order. Madeline, we are going to ask for a complete financial divorce. We are going to petition the court to place all assets in your name under a protected conservatorship managed by my firm, effectively cutting your parents off from every cent Henry left you. Do it, I said. Do it all. Just then, a commotion erupted in the hallway outside the trauma bay. I heard a voice I recognized, a voice that used to make me shrink into the corner of the room. She is my daughter, Daniel was shouting. I have a right to see her. She is confused. She is injured. Sir, you need to step back, a security guard's voice boomed. I am going in there. Victoria's voice joined the fray, shrill and frantic. Maddie, tell them it was an accident. We are here to take you home. My heart hammered against my ribs. For a second, the old instinct to obey kicked in. I started to slide off the gurney. Officer Martinez appeared at the curtain. She didn't look at me. She looked at the hallway. She unclipped the radio from her belt. I have 2 individuals attempting to breach the secure area, she said into the radio. Trauma Bay 4. Send backup. She turned to me. Stay put, Madeline. They are not getting in. I sat back. I listened to the sounds of the scuffle. You cannot stop us, Daniel yelled. She is a minor. Well, practically a minor. She is dependent on us. Sir? She is 23 years old. Officer Martinez's voice cut through the noise like a knife, and she has stated clearly that you are the assailants. If you take one more step, I will place you under arrest for disorderly conduct and witness tampering right here in the hospital hallway. Witness tampering? Victoria screeched. We are her parents. You are suspects, Martinez said. Now back away. There was a silence, then the sound of shuffling feet. Maddie! Victoria screamed one last time, desperation cracking her voice. Don't do this. Think about the family. Think about Logan. I closed my eyes. I thought about Logan. I thought about him standing there, watching me get hit, and worrying about his car keys. I am thinking about him, I whispered to the empty room. I am thinking he's going to have to learn to walk. Ms. Harrington placed a stack of papers on the rolling table in front of me. These are the emergency motions, she said. This is the petition for an ex parte order of protection. This asks the judge to ban Daniel and Victoria Rhodes from coming within 500 feet of you, your workplace, or your home. It also grants you temporary exclusive possession of your personal effects, meaning the police will escort you to the house to get your things. She flipped the page. And this is the hardship activation for the trust. It transfers the funds immediately to the new account we opened this morning. She handed me a pen. My hand was shaking, my head was throbbing, but as I looked at the signature line, I didn't see a terrified victim. I saw the girl in the photo Henry had left me, the girl whose mother had looked free. I signed my name, Madeline Rhodes. The ink was dark and permanent. I signed the restraining order. I signed the asset transfer. I signed the affidavit of identity theft. With every signature, I felt a weight lifting off my chest. It was physical, the crushing pressure of their expectations, their debts, their cruelty. It was all being transferred from my shoulders onto these pages. Ms. Harrington took the papers and organized them into a neat stack. She put them back in her briefcase and snapped the lock shut. The sound was loud and final, like a jail cell closing. She looked at me, her expression softening for the first time. Your grandfather told me something once, she said quietly. He said he knew they were greedy, but he hoped they were smart enough to keep the goose that laid the golden eggs alive. He said, "One day, they will get desperate, and when they realize they cannot beat the money out of her wallet anymore, they will try to beat the obedience into her body." She reached out and touched the bandage on my arm. He said, "That will be the day they lose her forever, because pain wakes you up a lot faster than logic does." I touched my swollen cheek. It still burned, but the fire felt different now. It wasn't the fire of shame. It was the fire of a bridge burning behind me, lighting the way forward. "He was right," I said. I let out a short, dry laugh that hurt my jaw. "They slapped me, and they knocked me right out of their grip." Officer Martinez poked her head back in. "They have been escorted off the premises," she said. "We have a unit stationed at the entrance just in case, and Madeline, the district attorney, is on call. Given the video evidence and the medical report, they are authorizing an immediate arrest warrant for domestic battery for both of them. We will be picking them up at their residence within the hour." "Arrest?" I asked. "Yes," Martinez said. "Tonight, they are not going home to their nice beds. They are going to booking." I looked at Ms. Harrington. She nodded. "It is over, Maddie," she said. "The secret is out, the folder is open, and the war is won." I lay back against the pillow. I was exhausted. Every inch of me hurt. I had no home to go to. I had destroyed my family. But for the first time in 23 years, I closed my eyes and didn't see a list of chores. I didn't see a debt I couldn't pay. I didn't see a brother I had to serve. I saw a blank page, and I held the pen. 3 weeks later, the air in the county courthouse smelled of floor wax and stale coffee, a scent that was miles away from the expensive perfume and chlorine of my father's backyard. I walked down the center aisle of courtroom 3B. My heels clicked rhythmically against the linoleum. I kept my head high, though the yellowish-green bruise on my cheek was still visible under a light layer of foundation. Beside me walked Ms. Harrington, looking like a warrior in a charcoal suit, and the assistant district attorney, a sharp-eyed man named Mr. Vance. On the other side of the aisle, sitting at the defense table, were Daniel and Victoria. They looked immaculate. They were dressed in soft, sympathetic colors. Victoria wore a pale blue cardigan that made her look fragile, wiping imaginary tears from her eyes with a tissue. Daniel wore a gray suit, his shoulders slumped in a posture of heavy, paternal grief. To anyone who didn't know the truth, they looked like loving parents who were being dragged through a nightmare by a rebellious, ungrateful child. When I sat down, Daniel looked at me. He gave me a small, sad nod, as if to say, "I forgive you for this tantrum." It made my stomach turn, but then I felt the weight of the heavy plastic folder in my bag, and the nausea replaced itself with cold resolve. The hearing was to determine the status of the permanent protection order and to adjudicate the emergency motion regarding the control of the trust assets. But because of the pending criminal charges, the atmosphere was heavy with tension. The proceedings began with their defense. Their lawyer, a slick man my father had likely hired on a retainer he could no longer afford, stood up. "Your Honor," he began, his voice smooth. "This is a tragic misunderstanding. My clients are loving parents who have provided a life of luxury for their daughter. The incident at the party was a result of extreme stress. Mr. Rhodes was trying to calm a hysterical young woman who was having a mental episode. It was an accident, a father trying to restrain a child who was out of control." Victoria sniffled audibly. "She has been unstable since her grandfather died." She whispered loudly enough for the judge to hear. "We tried to get her help." I stared straight ahead. Unstable. It was their favorite word. "We have video evidence," Mr. Vance said, standing up, "submitted by a guest who was recording the speeches." The judge nodded. "Play it." A large screen on the wall flickered to life. The courtroom went silent. On the screen, the sun was shining, the balloons were bobbing, and there I was, standing on the stage, looking small and terrified, but speaking clearly. "I am not letting you use my name to take out any more loans." Then the slap. On the big screen, The violence was shocking. It wasn't a restraint, it was a punishment. The sound of my father's hand hitting my face echoed through the speakers, a sharp, sickening crack. Then Victoria. The video showed her lunging, her face twisted into a snarl that looked nothing like the fragile woman sitting in the courtroom today. It showed her grabbing my hair. It showed her dragging me. "You are nothing. You are worth nothing without us." The video ended. The screen went black. The judge, a stern woman with reading glasses perched on her nose, looked from the screen to the defense table. Her expression was unreadable, but the air in the room had shifted. The loving parent's narrative had just been decapitated. "That did not look like restraint to me, counselor," the judge said dryly. "Context, Your Honor," the lawyer stammered. Emotions were running high. "We have witnesses to provide context," Mr. Vance said. Mrs. Holloway took the stand. She looked out of place in her knit sweater, but her voice was steady. "She came to work with bruises all the time," Mrs. Von Holloway told the court. "Arm, wrist, neck. She would flinch if you moved too fast. And she was always hungry. For a girl who lived in a mansion, she ate instant noodles in the break room like it was a feast." Then a neighbor, Mrs. Gable, took the stand. "Victoria liked to brag," Mrs. Gable said, looking pointedly at my stepmother. "At Bridge Club, she would say things like, 'Thank God Maddie is a saver. We have quite the rainy day fund there.' She talked about the girl like she was a bank account, not a person." Then it was Ms. Harrington's turn. She didn't use words. She used paper. She placed the folder on the evidence table. It landed with a heavy thud. "Your Honor," Ms. Harrington said, "the physical assault was merely the climax of a decade of abuse, but the real weapon used against Madeline Rhodes was not a hand, it was a pen." She opened the folder. Exhibit A, the amended will of Henry Caldwell, explicitly excluding Daniel and Victoria Rhodes from controlling the trust. Exhibit B, a series of emails from Henry Caldwell to Daniel Rhodes, warning him to stop using Madeline's social security number for credit applications. Exhibit C, 3 loan contracts, totaling $45,000, taken out in Madeline's name while she was a full-time student with no income. The signatures on these documents do not match Madeline's driver's license. They match Victoria Rhodes's handwriting from checks written to the country club. A murmur went through the courtroom. Mr. Vance stepped forward to drive the nail home. "Your Honor, what we see here is a systemic pattern of financial exploitation. They use the dynamic of the stepchild and the eldest daughter to turn Ms. Rhodes into a beast of burden. They forced her to carry the debt for their lifestyle while denying her the basic dignity of autonomy." My father stood up then. He couldn't help himself. His face was red, the veins in his neck bulging just like they had at the party. "I raised her for 20 years, he shouted, pointing a trembling finger at me. "I put a roof over her head. I fed her. She owes me." The judge slammed her gavel. "Sit down, Mr. Rhodes," she ordered. "I have rights," Daniel yelled. "I am her father." The judge leaned forward over the bench. Her eyes were cold and sharp. "Mr. Rhodes, did you raise her to be a daughter, or did you raise her to be a shield?" The question hung in the air, vibrating with truth. Daniel's mouth opened and closed. He sank back into his chair, defeated. Victoria saw the ship sinking and tried to grab a life raft. She burst into fresh tears. "I just wanted the family to be united," she wailed. "I was afraid she would be taken advantage of by outsiders. I was trying to protect the family legacy." Ms. Harrington stood up, cool as ice. "The only outsider in this equation, Mrs. Rhodes, is you. Specifically, you are outside the trust. Henry Caldwell made sure of that." The judge spent 20 minutes reviewing the documents in silence. The scratching of her pen was the only sound in the room. Finally, she looked up. "I have seen enough," she said. "I am granting the permanent order of protection. Daniel and Victoria Rhodes are to have no contact with the petitioner for a period of 10 years. Any violation will result in immediate incarceration." She turned a page. Regarding the assets, the court recognizes the validity of the Henry Caldwell Trust and the hardship clause. All assets are confirmed as the sole property of Madeline Rhodes. The defendants are ordered to surrender any and all documents, keys, or access codes related to these accounts within 24 hours. She looked at Daniel and Victoria. Furthermore, given the compelling evidence of identity theft and fraud presented in Exhibit C, I am referring this file to the District Attorney's Office for a full criminal investigation. You are not leaving here with a warning. You are leaving here as suspects in a felony inquiry. I heard a gasp from the gallery behind me. I turned slightly. Logan was sitting in the back row. He looked pale, small, and terrified. He was staring at his parents as if he had never seen them before. And regarding the vehicle, the judge added, almost as an afterthought, the sports car purchased with the disputed funds is to be impounded as evidence of the fraud. It is no longer property of the family. Logan slumped against the bench. His graduation present, his status symbol, his legacy, it was all gone. It wasn't a prize. It was proof of a crime. The gavel banged. Court is adjourned. I stood up. My legs felt steady. My hands weren't shaking. As the bailiff moved to escort Daniel and Victoria out, not through the main doors, but toward the side exit where they would be processed for the criminal investigation, Victoria stopped. She turned to me. Her mascara was running, but her eyes were still full of venom. "You will regret this," she hissed. "You turned your back on your mother." I stopped packing my bag. I looked at her. I didn't feel fear. I didn't feel anger. I felt nothing but a profound, empty distance. "No, Victoria," I said calmly. "I just turned my back on the people who turned their backs on my dignity." Daniel tried to step toward me, but the bailiff held him back. He looked desperate, a man watching his kingdom crumble. "Maddie," he pleaded, his voice cracking. "I am still your dad. You cannot do this to your dad." I looked at the man who had slapped me in front of 200 people because I wouldn't help him lie. "My real father was the man who believed I was worth protecting," I said. "He died 2 years ago, but his folder is still alive." I turned away. I didn't wait for their response. I didn't need the last word because the judge had already given it. In the hallway, the sunlight was streaming through the high windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. It was bright, blindingly bright. "Ms. Harrington stopped me near the exit. She held out the blue folder. It had been rebound in a clean, clear plastic cover. It looked orderly. It looked finished. "Here," she said. "You should keep this." I hesitated. I thought it was evidence. "We made copies for the police," she said. "The original belongs to you. It is your history, Madeline, but it is not a weapon anymore. It is a diploma." "A diploma?" "Proof," she said, smiling softly. "Proof that you chose yourself." I took the folder. It felt lighter than before. I walked toward the heavy double doors of the courthouse. I could see the world outside, the busy street, the trees, the people going about their lives who had no idea that I had just fought a war and won. I paused at the threshold. I thought about the 10-year-old girl scrubbing dishes while her family ate. I thought about the teenager hiding notebooks under her mattress. I thought about the young woman who almost let them break her. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with air that finally belonged to me. If you have ever heard someone tell you that you are worth nothing, I want you to remember this moment. I want you to remember that your value is not located in their wallet. It is not located in their approval. Your value is in the way you stand up when they try to knock you down. It is in the folder you keep in your heart, the one that holds the truth of who you are. I pushed the doors open. The sun hit my face, warm and welcoming. I didn't look back at the courthouse. I didn't look back at the parents being led away in handcuffs. I didn't look back at the brother who had lost his crown. I adjusted the folder against my chest, walked down the stairs, and stepped into the rest of my life. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. So please drop a comment below and share your thoughts on Maddie's journey. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to the Lila Revenge Stories channel. like this video, and hit that hype button so we can share this message of strength with even more people. See you in the next story.